Yes.
The lead Strait Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1480 of the War News stream. And tonight we have very big news yet again. Tonight we've seen that the Marine forces have left the United States and deployed for the imminent Kark Island invasion, as we believe it right now. Also, major missile strikes have been taking place today in Iran's capital, Tehran, and also other major cities. And we've also seen the largest attack on Moscow by Ukraine during the entire year so far as of tonight. And it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to see significant developments in the South China Sea, as the USS Triploi Amphibious Ready Group has been making all available speed, and at this moment today has already closed the ground from Japan into the South China Sea, and appears to be rapidly barreling towards the Middle East at this moment, with about 2.5 thousand U.S. Marines in the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit in tow with their Amphibious Ready Group. It is believed at the moment that the 5,000 Marines, which will now be within the area here soon, including those in the 31st MEU on board the USS Triploi and the rest of the vessels in the Amphibious Ready Group, may be preparing for actions to clear the Strait of Hormuz, as we have finally heard the news that we have been looking for here on this channel. Today, the President of the United States has made it incredibly clear that the United States will be viewing a strategic imperative as far as reopening the Strait of Hormuz and commercial shipping traffic passing through the area. We have now heard that they are attempting to build an international coalition of maritime forces from a large variety of countries to enter the area and to ensure that global trade and freedom of international movements in international waters can resume. This also includes the Strait of Hormuz, as France has openly announced today that they will be dedicating an entire armada of 10 French destroyers and frigates that will be moving into the area off the coast of Al-Hodeida and will be ensuring that free passage will continue not only through the Strait of Hormuz eventually, but also within the area of the southern Red Sea, which is absolutely massive news, as we've already seen that the Houthis seem to be pre-positioning themselves to become the next crisis point, at least for international shipping. The southern Red Sea passage, which accounts for nearly 12% of all international shipping traffic, appears to be getting close to being threatened by the Houthis Houthis. We've now started to hear that they are taking open bribes from shipping companies that are giving them payments for the Houthis to look the other way and allow their ships to pass through the area, suggesting that here incredibly soon they may begin unsolicited attacks on international shipping and start to largely close this major shipping lane along with the Strait of Hormuz, which has already been closed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, meaning that the French Armada's arrival is going to be almost just within the nick of time. We've also been able to see that at the same time, near to the area of the Strait of Hormuz, it appears that there has been some continued statements, and some Indian sailing ships were able to make it through the Strait of Hormuz overnight, only 2 of them, but it is still showing that at least some vessels that are not Iranian flagged or are traveling to and from China have been able to make it through the strait in the meantime. Outside of that, the United States of America has also started to continue its statements about the Kharg Island situation and generally insinuating that U.S. armed forces may conduct even larger and more devastating strikes against Kharg Island, including attacks on the oil infrastructure within the southern side of the island. We've also been able to hear as well that the Islamic Republic of Iran, while largely seeing that things are certainly not going to be going into their favor, especially now that we are actually dedicating significant amounts of firepower towards the area of the Strait of Hormuz to begin its clearance, and also ensuring that the Houthis cannot affect the area of the southern Red Sea, we have also been able to see that the Iranians have been trying to fire back as much as they can. We were able to confirm that several impacts were reported near to the area of the Kuwait International Airport, and some Iranian drones did fly in the Saudi Arabian airspace, and of course we did get to hear of air raid sirens going off basically within all Gulf states once again today, largely due to the incoming drone threat. It seems as though this is also near to the very cusp of air defense capabilities, at least for our allies in the region, as the Israelis have announced that they are running critically low on missile-based interceptors and could be running out at some point here within the near future. They are still conducting their attacks against Hezbollah within Lebanon due to the fact that, given the low number of missile interceptors that Israel currently has, continued small rocket attacks from Hezbollah could pose a major threat to the state of Israel and its citizenry within the northern area of the country. U.S. airstrikes have also continued against Iran today with a great deal of proficiency, and we have been able to see that more high-priority targets have been struck. We've also been able to see that China has finally returned back to its normal low-level coercion efforts by the People's Liberation Army's Eastern Theater Command against the island of Taiwan, as several Chinese aircraft were detected in the air defense identification zone around the island of Taiwan under the control of the Republic of China, and those aircraft were monitored by the ROC and were generally thwarted, at least by completely entering Taiwanese airspace and sovereign skies, by the Republic of China's Air Force, which met them at the head. We've also been able to hear of continued civil unrest occurring within Cuba, as the oil blackouts and general energy blackout is continuing to see that emotions within Cuba are reaching an absolute fever pitch. And we've also been able to hear that in a shocking announcement, the United States of America will be extending the service life of the USS Nimitz until 2027, meaning that the former decommissioned Nimitz is now the once again reactivated Nimitz U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. We've also been able to see that the Ukrainians have conducted absolutely significant attacks within the area of the Russian Don Oblasts, as we did get to hear that the port of Novorossiysk was hit heavily today, along with the Russian ferries inside the Kerch Strait, and we've also been able to see that a record-breaking attack for this year has been conducted by the Ukrainian armed forces against the city of Moscow, with some damage at least being reported on the ground, but we were not able to see that on film. This has led the Russian government to get even more concerned, and now we're hearing that Russia is now shoring up the air defenses around his mansions everywhere else but Moscow. Serbia is also preparing for a larger war at this moment and has stated that a lot of their surrounding neighbors are planning on invading them, and that they are prepared to use hypersonic missiles to be able to fire upon the surrounding countries that are actual NATO states and to be able to defend Serbian lands from foreign invaders. Well, a fairly odd incident to say the least. But we have a whole bunch of news to cover over the course of the day, folks, and we're going to be trying to get through the news starting with our largest stories first and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. But before we get on into all of that news, I do want to make sure that we take a quick break before we get into it and actually cover the breaking news that's coming out at this moment right now. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so right now we have some breaking news. As always, right at the very beginning of the stream tonight, we are seeing that down in Cuba right now. The enforcer did mention that there are currently ongoing protests, and in fact, I would call them riots inside of Cuba. We're seeing buildings getting torched. We're seeing all kinds of things happening down there, and also large numbers of people in the streets. We are seeing right at this very minute that the street protests or riots are continuing, and it looks like they are getting even more ramped up from the looks of it. So these are pretty large. large, and it looks like there's a lot of people in the streets yelling, screaming. It looks like there's also possibly maybe some security forces in there. I can't really tell about that though, but let's see what's going on in Cuba real quick.
We see some sort of a demonstration. And we also see in some additional clips here the continued procession through this area.
Oh man, someone's peeling out.
Man, with a little gas left, unfortunate. Honestly, it's like maybe they need to conserve it.
It is interesting that Cuba is having these massive protests and riots right now at this time, because it's hard to tell what this is really about. Is it about the situation with the fuel shortage? Is it about something else? Is it about the U.S. involvement in Cuba at this point? It's hard to tell what they're upset about, but clearly people are going berserk from the looks of it in the video.
It definitely does appear that that is the case, and we'll be trying to keep an eye on that, and we'll be covering that a little bit later on in the stream as far as the situation that's now ongoing within Cuba. But getting us back to our major news at the moment, we are going to be returning back towards the area of the Middle East, and actually, to cover our Middle Eastern news, we have to start our story today within the South China Sea. We have been able to note over the course of the past 24 hours that the USS Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, which is based out of Japan, has been able to cover a significant amount of ground in only about 24 hours, showing that currently the Amphibious Ready Group is making all available speed from the state of Japan and is currently racing on its way and into the area of the Arabian Sea, where it will be preparing to possibly conduct some form of an amphibious operation against the Islamic Republic of Iran and highly likely against the Strait of Hormuz itself. Satellite photography today from the South China Sea actually showed the USS Triploi, an America-class landing helicopter assault vessel, moving at what we can only describe at a significant clip. Noticing the general, I guess you could say, wake behind the vessel, it is incredibly strong, and it's also a fairly long distance, giving us an idea that this vessel is traveling nearly at its top available speed. And we also understand that the other two San Antonio-class amphibious support vessels are also somewhere within the area, although we cannot see them in the satellite picture. These three vessels are currently transporting the elements of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit out of INDOPACCOM and its basing in Japan, and they are moving them on and towards the area of the Middle East and into CENTCOM's area of responsibility. This is a fairly significant movement, as landing helicopter assault vessels and landing helicopter decks, or LHDs, are both specialized for amphibious operations and near littoral support on shore for forces that are attempting to land and create a beachhead. The use of these sorts of vessels usually indicates that some form of amphibious or onshore operations will be conducted at some point in the future, as the arrival and use of LHDs and LHAs generally suggest that every single time. The last time we saw such a deployment of an LHD or an LHA would have been around the area of Libya in 2014, when some Marine Expeditionary Units were actually embarked on shore inside of Libya and were conducting peacekeeping operations as a part of a larger international coalition after the collapse of the Gaddafi regime several years prior, I believe around 2013 or 2012. It also appears that at this moment, this vessel and its amphibious ready group will be moving, just to put this clearly, towards to the area inside of the Arabian Sea, which puts it fairly close to the Strait of Hormuz. And as we have been able to hear today, we have finally been able to hear, folks, some incredibly positive news. While we've been stating for generally over the course of about 2 weeks, getting on towards 2.5 weeks at this point, that the United States didn't appear to be planning for the closure of the Strait of Hormuz or the blockade of it, while that has been the case, and we really haven't seen a lot of actions indicating that the United States really planned for the Strait of Hormuz to be an issue, we have finally been able to see that some statements have been made today showing that most U.S. military efforts are finally going to be diverted towards the Strait of Hormuz and attempting to clear out all of the Iranian threats so international shipping can resume. According to a statement that was made today, we were able to hear the following from the President of the United States. Many countries, especially those who are affected by Iran's attempted closure of the Hormuz Strait, will be sending warships in conjunction with the United States of America to keep the strait open and safe. We've already destroyed 100% of Iran's military capability. That's not true. But it's easy for them to send a drone or two, drop a mine, or deliver a close-range missile somewhere along or in this waterway, no matter how badly defeated they are. Hopefully, China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others that are affected by the artificial constraint will send ships to the area so that the Hormuz Strait will no longer be a threat by a nation that has been totally decapitated. In the meantime, the United States will be bombing the hell out of the shoreline and continually shooting Iranian boats and ships out of the water. One way or another, we will soon get the Hormuz Strait open, safe, and free. So it does appear that we're finally seeing some attention is being diverted towards to the area of the Strait of Hormuz, which is fairly long overdue, but still it's great to hear that it's finally happening. It's not just going to be ignored throughout the entirety of the conflict. It appears that at the moment they are trying to gather up some form of a multinational coalition, possibly of allied nations and maybe even other countries like the People's Republic of China, which are generally allied to the Islamic Republic of Iran, to try and conduct some sort of freedom of waterways deployments or operations within the area of the Strait of Hormuz. We have also been able to hear that apparently the general consensus is that the United States is trying to create a multinational coalition in this effort, which is a little bit interesting and suggesting once again that this was not generally factored into U.S. war planning at the start of the conflict. If this closure of the strait was actually planned into U.S. military objectives and general strategy at the beginning of this conflict, then it would not have been necessary to plan for or attempt to create a multinational naval force or maritime force to see the opening and clearance of the Strait of Hormuz. The closure would have already been factored into war planning, and the United States would have already had some form of a plan to be able to deal with the closure of the strait. It now appears that it's becoming a lot more obvious that there was not a plan, or at least an idea at the beginning of the conflict, that the Strait of Hormuz would truly be closed, and now they're trying to gather up the multinational coalition necessary to bring in demining vessels that we no longer possess and are operating to see that we will eventually be able to, one, demine the Strait of Hormuz, and two, make sure to destroy all of the anti-ship threats currently still existing along the coastline of Iran, so that way U.S. ships and international vessels involved in the oil trade and other trades with the Middle East will be able to make it through the Strait of Hormuz safely. This also means that convoy duties may be beginning here in the very near future. While we have not seen a large amount of countries respond to the call for a multinational coalition, it does appear that one country has responded in quite significant form, which is the Republic of France. The Republic of France has already announced that they'll be sending a significant armada of around 10 destroyers and frigates towards the area of the southern Red Sea. They will not be involved in any Strait of Hormuz activities to ensure the international passageway and safe international passage of the waters of the southern Red Sea. We're starting to hear that that's becoming a significant concern at the moment, as we're already hearing that the Houthis are beginning to take bribes for safe passage through the Red Sea, suggesting that if you do not pay the protection payments to the Houthis, they might try and attack and blow up your vessel if it's passing through the area. And we've also been able to see that some analysts, including those at Visegrad 24, are already pointing out that the Houthis could start to launch anti-ship attacks against international shipping that's passing through the southern Red Sea, which is another linchpin and chokehold point that the Islamic Republic of Iran largely has by proxy through its Yemeni Houthi forces within western Yemen. This passageway is incredibly crucial as well to international trade, and while this isn't as dire a situation as the Strait of Hormuz if it was closed, it is something that would be somewhat concerning and somewhat considerable, at least at the moment, if it was closed. About, I believe it's something around the lines of 12% of all international shipping traffic passes through that area of the southern Red Sea, meaning that if that area was closed off, all of those vessels, about 1 in every 10 in the world, would then have to make the much longer voyage around the entirety of Africa. Some vessels already have to do that because they're so large they actually can't pass through the Suez Canal, and so generally it's not that big of an issue because a lot of the VLCCs couldn't even go through the Suez in the first place, from what we understand. That's why around 28% of tankers pass through the Strait of Hormuz in the entirety of the world, but then in the end, only about 12% of all shipping in the entirety of the world pass through the Suez Canal. But the French will be ensuring by their large armada that they will be plopping down right off the Yemeni coast that the Yemeni Houthis will generally not be able to try and conduct attacks that would shut down that international shipping lane, and that one will see preemptive action taken and pre-planning to ensure that it remains open even in the midst of possible Houthi attacks that could be coming here soon. But a lot of people are talking about the situation north of the southern Red Sea and near to the area of the Strait of Hormuz. And a lot of people are wondering whether or not this is going to end up being a somewhat successful operation. But in the meantime, however, a lot of people are actually talking about another situation that's happening a little bit further north and towards the area of the borders near to Iraq and Kuwait, which would be around the area of Karg Island. A lot of people have been talking about the situation here, and we were able to see that apparently the President of the United States stated that he was surprised that Iran decided to attack other Middle Eastern countries in response to the U.S.-Israeli operation, and that U.S. strikes on Karg Island on Saturday totally demolished most of the island, but the United States might hit it a few more times just for fun. We've also
Just for fun? What in the world? I've never really heard a military objective quite just for fun. That's a bit of a different one.
I've never heard of bombing military for kicks. That's a fairly new one to me, but we also were able to get some additional footage of the strikes that were conducted on the area of Karg Island, including what appears to be a radome that was close to the area of the Karg airport. And we can see that in this clip right here of the radome being directly hit and destroyed, along with a couple of additional vehicles and equipments of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that were operating near to the island, including that Pantsir air defense system. Rest in pieces. And a couple of other Iranian military systems as well.
I wonder if it's truly the case that they've taken out 100% of Karg Island's defenses. It seems like with the size of the strikes that we've seen so far in these videos, and also the sheer amount of aircraft that were airborne during the strikes, it seems like that's probably the case. Now, I will say this, the president's certainly exaggerating a little bit when he's saying that Iran's been 100% incapacitated. That's simply not the case, or however he worded it in that post. It's not 100% done, because we just saw that they launched a massive attack on Israel tonight. So obviously they're not 100% incapacitated, or otherwise they wouldn't be launching massive attacks. So I wonder how much Karg Island's actually been taken out.
A decent amount of their air defense capabilities have been taken out, and generally their resupply capabilities, at least rapid resupply, has been taken out by most of the airlifts of the Iranian Air Force being destroyed within the prior 2 weeks, and also the runway at Karg Airport being cratered. But largely, they're not completely out of the fight, because the fact that they're showing additional footage of the strikes on Karg Island and additional forces that were not shown to have been hit last night is giving us an idea that there may be a larger element of IRGC forces on this island that are still alive or operational and have not yet been hit in the strikes. Also, the fact that they're saying they may hit them a few times, whether it's for fun or for business. You generally don't bomb empty areas of sand on some small island in the middle of nowhere if there's nothing there to be bombed. So that also indicates there is further military equipment that has to be bombed, and the statements by the president saying that everything's been completely destroyed and it's all over is, of course, an overstatement. If that was the case, the war would have ended today, and the war is still going on as we're covering this right now. So, there's still things to be done, and generally, if the Iranians were completely destroyed, we'd also see that the Strait of Hormuz will be open, and it's not open yet. And we're still trying to work on clearing out that strait. I mean, luckily enough, we're finally seeing that there is some sort of an attempt to start working on clearing the strait. That's finally being done. But at the same time, though, it's still closed. So that generally gives us the idea the Iranians aren't completely defeated. Otherwise, they wouldn't pose a threat in that area. However, a lot of people aren't talking about the situation with Karg Island and this rumor that's been passing around that the U.S. Marine Expeditionary Unit on board the Iwo Jima ARG is actually going to be attempting to try and take the Karg Island area instead of an area around the Strait of Hormuz. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so we are hearing, and of course, we talked about this last night a little bit on the air, that analysts are speculating that the U.S. will invade Karg Island, which is the island right off of Iran that is, I think, responsible for about 90% of their oil exports or so. And the objective behind it is to choke the Iranian oil economy. So, will it work successfully? About 58% or so, if I can get that out right there, said yes, it will be taken successfully, while 20% said no, it will likely be disastrous, and 11% said I don't think it'll actually happen the way they're describing it. So here's the catch that I have to bring up right here. If right now the objective is to choke the Iranian oil economy, then how come the U.S. didn't just hit it with the airstrikes? Because they specifically avoided hitting the oil infrastructure when they did the airstrikes on Karg Island. So why did they do that? And if it's true that they're going to send the Marines in to take the island, to choke out the oil economy, then why are we going to risk the Marines' lives instead of just using the airstrikes to take it out if that's the objective? So me personally, I wouldn't want to risk the lives of the 2,500 Marines to pull that off. So I'm hoping that generally they resort to airstrikes if they're going to do something like that. But the rumor is they're going to use the Marines to invade Karg Island. So we'll have to see how that goes. But generally, I'm kind of on the fence about it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I generally have to say that I think that it wouldn't be taken successfully for now, and also it would be really hard and difficult to hold a smaller island like that, both for the Iranians, as we're seeing right now, and for us, considering that it's such a small area. Generally, landing a shot anywhere on Karg Island is going to do some damage, especially if a brigade-level element is on the island, which in MAU is pretty much comparable to a brigade combat team within the U.S. Army. It's a little bit smaller, but similar in size. I would say that that really wouldn't be the greatest idea to see that it's physically taken and then held by actual forces on the island. It'd probably be smarter to actually just go and land on the island, quote unquote, take it, and then just leave. And leave either a very small force there to be able to hold the island, or just exert control from a distance at that point after we've physically taken the island and largely shut off the operations of most Iranian oil exports on the island at a minimum. I think that would be the smarter approach to take, but to be entirely honest with y'all folks, I don't think this thing is revolving around Karg Island, because many analysts are kind of forgetting that for an amphibious ready group to get there, they have to get through the Strait of Hormuz, and that's generally the big problem. You know, it's like saying we're going to get to the kitchen, but to get to the kitchen, we got to get through the living room, you know, and then there's an armed gunman in the living room. It's like, well, you know, you can't make it to the kitchen yet. You got to deal with what's going on in the living room first to get to the kitchen. So I'd have to say...
And also on top of that, it's like even if the Marines go to Karg Island, you know, Karg Island, with it being largely destroyed at this point, except for the oil infrastructure, how are the Marines going to protect themselves? Because the Iranians still have the ability to launch missiles and drones, and the Marines obviously won't have air defense. They won't have time to install anything like that because they'll literally have just arrived. So they're going to be pretty much wide open for missile attacks at that point. So I'm not sure how they're going to defend themselves once they arrive there on the island, because they'll probably take it quick, but they have no way to defend from the sky for the most part, unless they plan on bringing a whole bunch of fighter jets over. But I mean, that's only a temporary solution. Deploying fighter jets as air defense, that can't remain that way indefinitely. So the Marines will be in the wide open. So I don't know really what they're bringing in the Marines for. If they go to Karg Island, I'm not really sure how they're going to pull that off. I'm not really seeing the plan with that. And also, it's like they're not going to use 2,500 Marines to invade, like, for example, Bandar Abbas or something. Like that seems to be a little bit of a stretch, at least in my opinion.
And also, a lot of people have been saying, and this is something that I've been hearing in some analysis out there, and I got to say that this is a little far-fetched, is that some people are trying to say that the amphibious ready group from the Tripoli is just going to fly over land, over Oman, the UAE, and throughout the entirety of Saudi Arabia, to then base somewhere on the Saudi coastline or the Kuwaiti coastline, to then try and conduct an attack on Karg. And the problem with that is that that's completely removing the whole benefit of even using those forces. They're now hundreds of miles away from their actual support ship, which is literally geared up and rigged to be able to operate all of those aircraft. Now they're basically operating like an armory rotary air assault unit, which would make no sense. So if you're bringing in this sort of a specialized force, clearly you're going to operate everything from the deck of the LHA, and you're not just going to leave the LHA basically without anything, with the cupboards bare, just hanging out in the Gulf of Oman, while all of its actual combat aviation elements are hundreds of miles away, trying to prepare for some invasion of Karg Island. First things come first. You don't take Moscow without taking something like Kursk. You know, that's generally how that works. You don't take Washington, D.C. without taking some other major city nearby, and then jumping into Washington, D.C. Offensives don't just hop over objectives. You have to take stuff leading up to an objective beforehand. And right now, the Strait of Hormuz is the thing that has to be dealt with before anything else can happen in the Persian Gulf. We can't even get a ship in the Persian Gulf right now because we can't get them through the Strait of Hormuz. So with that in mind, this amphibious ready group isn't going to be focusing on Karg Island for, you know, that reason alone. They're going to have to deal with the Strait of Hormuz first, meaning that all of that combat aviation power is highly likely going to be directed at something in the Strait of Hormuz first before it ever goes to Karg Island, because that would just be, in no better words, ass backwards to do it any other way. So in my opinion, I think that that's probably going to be what they're there for. And I would also be honest with y'all, taking Karg Island, which is a fairly small area that close to the Iranian coast, I mean, that gives such a small window of response time for those forces that would be on that island. They're going to start getting slammed. I mean, like, it's not going to be a good scene at all. But moving on from that, We also have some news that has been coming out of the area of the Strait of Hormuz today that has been a little bit more positive. We've been able to hear, folks, that 2 Indian ships made it through in the night. But I have to make it clear that these Indian ships are the ones that we saw the other day that looked like pirate ships. They're not incredibly large. They're like break bulk carriers of a fairly small size. So they're not large, and we think that that's why they kind of made it through. Like, to be entirely frank with you all, I think that's the case because the Iranians have generally been trying to target and destroy larger ships, larger intermodal container ships, or larger VLCCs. These Indian break bulk vessels were both about 300 feet long or less, and generally are carrying basically nothing. I mean, if you looked at their cargo holds, it looks like a moving van. I mean, they're not really moving anything that's significant or important to the global economy. It's basically 2 men in a truck in the Persian Gulf going back to India. So generally, that's why I believe that those slipped through without getting hit, is because what importance do they have to the global economy? And the reality of it is none. So why would they waste an anti-ship missile on a boat like that? That wouldn't really make a lot of sense. Still, we generally see right now, at least, that the Strait of Hormuz is still largely closed. There is one vessel, another Iranian cargo vessel, that is currently passing through the area, but outside of that, really no other vessel is risking the transit. We can see this vessel right here that actually has gotten fairly close to the area of the Strait of Hormuz, but from what we understand, it left the pulling area down off the coast near to the area of Fujairah, went north, and then turned around and started sailing back basically at full speed. So it doesn't really appear that they looked like they were going to try and make a run through the strait, and then they turned around and they started to run basically right back to the pooling group that's near to Fujairah at the moment. Once again, showing there are no passages that are happening in the Strait of Hormuz, at least for right now. But a lot of people are talking about this idea of forming a multinational coalition to be able to try and clear out the Strait of Hormuz. And it seems as though a lot of people are either taking the idea that nations are going to respond to this, probably due to the fact that every nation on the globe is going to be affected by rising oil prices generally equally, or some people are saying that they won't sacrifice their ships due to the fact that that could put their sailors and significant amounts of capital in the costs of those ships and the training of the crew at risk by attempting to clear the strait. But Matthew, what are people currently thinking about that right now? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so the U.S. has made the official announcement today that they're calling on all nations, including China, I think Japan was one of them, and several other nations, to send ships to the Hormuz Strait to try to reopen it. So do you think that'll work? Will the nations respond? 41% said no, the nations will not risk their ships, while 36% said they will respond, and 18% said I'm 50-50 on it. And this one here is actually not a bad idea. Like, it's a pretty decent idea for one reason. It's basically telling the other nations, we're not going to risk our ships. You're going to risk yours instead. That's basically what that's saying to a large degree. So the U.S. has invited all these different nations to basically, I guess you could say, group up at the entrance of the Hormuz Strait, and then they're going to sit there and point at each other. They're going to say, you first. Then the Chinese are going to say, no, you first. You go right ahead, United States. Japan's going to say, no, be our guest. You go first. It's like, who's going to go first into the Strait of Hormuz? It's like the one that goes first will probably get attacked by Iran, would be my guess. So I'm not really sure who's going to go in first if they actually show up to this situation. So I'm kind of 50-50 on it, because someone's going to be the first one to go in, and whoever that is going to be probably dealing with something serious, I would imagine. So, the U.S. hasn't been willing to escort ships yet because they don't want to risk it, and I'm not sure who else is going to be willing to either. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd also have to say that I think it's actually a bit of a mix. I would have to be a little bit in the undecided camp because, one, this isn't really anyone else's problem as far as who calls the issue. It doesn't really it's not like the Iranians went out of their way to do this without some sort of a larger war happening in the foreground. The United States started a war against Iran, which is a preemptive strike, to be able to try and knock out the Iranian government and to overthrow the regime, which didn't succeed. And then in response, the Iranian regime then started to completely blockade the Strait of Hormuz. So generally, in terms of who's responsible and who kind of has to clean up the mess, really no other country in the world is obligated to clean up the mess except for the United States and Israel, because they're the attacking parties in the conflict right now. On the other hand, they're also being affected by the rising oil prices, because rising oil prices aren't just something that's happening to the United States and Israel and Iran, it's happening to everybody in the world. So these countries might be having to weigh that out of, this isn't really our problem. We weren't involved in this war, and so this is something the United States generally has to deal with on its own. And there's a ticking time bomb on top of us, like everyone else at this point. If we don't deal with it, the rising prices of oil are also affecting us and them as well, whether they do something or not. So the United States would still be obligated to have to deal with this, whether other people come down there to try and do anything or not. But on the other hand, a lot of these countries probably don't want to see the undue economic suffering that will be caused by the rising prices of oil, which are still rising at this moment right now. And because of that, they might send their own ships down to try and help clear out the Strait of Hormuz, so that way they can see that the Strait of Hormuz is cleared out a little bit quicker, and the oil prices either don't rise as high as they're going to rise, or they don't stay at the price they're at for as long as they were going to. So I'd have to say that I'm kind of on the fence, and I think it's going to depend on each country and their answer to see which ones join in and which ones don't. Also, another thing that I have to point out is that the British probably might not join in. We already know that the French are joining in. The French are joining in not in the Strait of Hormuz, but near to the Strait of Aden, which is basically this area down here. And that's what we generally understand at the moment is going on, at least in that direction. But the British might not join because the British actually requested to join way earlier on, and the president openly trashed the British for even offering to join in with their two carrier strike groups of the HMS Queen Elizabeth and the HMS Prince of Wales. So based off of that sort of a kind of basically snark answer about a week and a half ago, the British might decide that the U.S. has to open it regardless whether they're there or not, and they'll just sit it out and watch the U.S. have to do all the heavy lifting, and along with the French, which are going to keep the Strait of Aden open in the southern Red Sea. So, I also would have to tell y'all, to be honest, I'm trying to think of each nation that was mentioned. The People's Republic of China is probably not going to help, because the People's Republic of China is already getting its oil from Iran still at the moment. We didn't hit any of the oil infrastructure on Karg Island or any of the other ports within Iran, which means that all of the ships that are loading up with oil and heading out of Iran, they're all still going to China, and China's still getting their oil. So for them, it's not a problem. They can just allow the strait to stay closed, and while the prices will rise, they're still going to have a supply of oil, which is better than not having a secure flow of oil coming out of the Middle East. We would know that the Japanese probably wouldn't respond either, because while the Japanese generally are heavily involved in the protection of international law, and they were involved in anti-piracy actions against Somalis back in the early 2010s, the Japanese specifically have constitutional provisions that stop them from conducting any form of what could be perceived as offensive actions. And while there has been some heavy debates within Japanese parliament on rescinding that specific article with an amendment to their constitution, that has not happened yet, meaning that Japan might actually be bound by constitutional duty to not get involved, as it may be viewed by the Japanese parliament as a possible aggressive or offensive action against another country, which is strictly forbade by the Japanese constitution. Let me see if I can get the other names of the countries, because I think there's a few that I'm missing out on here. Let's see here. China, France, we already covered those. Japan, South Korea. South Korea could possibly join in, but I have a feeling that they're probably not going to, because we already know that the South Korean government has protested the removal of the THAAD air defense systems by the U.S. 8th Army that are being diverted to CENTCOM, along with a large amount of Patriots. So they may actually claim that they can't get involved due to strategic concerns that the North Koreans are currently escalating tensions on the peninsula, and due to the fact that their air defenses are fairly weakened due to the fact that we've moved a lot of ours out of South Korea and into the Middle East. They may say that due to their own strategic defensive purposes, they really can't divert any of their navy out of the region, because that could leave them vulnerable to a possible North Korean attack. And then we've already addressed the UK. So those are generally the big countries that actually were mentioned and what they might say. We already know the French are largely hopping in. The British might hop in, but they might not. And then South Korea probably isn't. China definitely isn't. Japan probably wouldn't. We'll have to see how the debates go in their parliament on whether or not that's an offensive action. And then as far as others go, we don't know who the others are, and we'll have to see who they are as time continues to pass and if they directly respond to this call for aid. But a lot of people are also talking about another incident that's gone on today that we have been able to hear about, which has been quite interesting in Muscat, Oman. It appears that right now the Omani government has actually been trying to beg both sides to get to the negotiating table. And Oman has reached out to the U.S. in an attempt to broker a peace deal, and the president has declined, per Reuters. The details included the following. Oman has tried multiple times to open the line of communications, but the White House has stated multiple times that they are not interested, and a senior White House official stated that the president is focused on pressing ahead with the war, and maybe there's a day, but not right now. And Iran has also rejected efforts by the Omanis and several other countries to also try and come to the negotiating table. So both sides right now are completely refusing to talk, meaning that this war will have to go on until one of them's willing to talk, and one of them also shows up front that they're willing to make some form of concessions that'll make the other side interested enough to also come to the table and get involved in some form of talks. Meaning that as of right now, this war is definitely slated to be going on for a good bit longer. If both sides are showing that they're not apt or willing to talk at all in any form of negotiations, that generally gives us an idea they're going to be keeping this thing going for a little while longer, because they'll have to wear down the willpower of one government or the other, either the US government or the Iranian government. And in this sort of a conflict, the willpower of the Iranian government is probably going to get worn down quicker because we have been able to achieve air supremacy over their country. And once the Strait of Hormuz and its blockade is lifted, generally the only sort of leverage that they had at this point in the conflict will have completely ceased, which is great for us, meaning that we'll be pretty much on the strategic winning side in every single front at that point, even including the Strait of Hormuz once we clear it out. So a lot of people are wondering, should there be any attempts at talks? Should we be the dove of peace? Maybe we should send Witkoff to go talk to Putin and Zelensky one more time about how peace needs to be achieved. Or maybe we just need to keep this thing going until it's concluded. And it looks like a lot of people are saying something quite interesting here, something that we've generally held as a strong premise on this channel for 4 years about talking to enemies of the Republic about possible peace talks. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so now that we've heard today that the U.S. has refused ceasefire talks to end the Iran war, in fact, they refused it and said, we'll wait until we're done. That's what they said today. Was it a good move? 54% said yes, it was. We should have no ceasefire talks, while 20% said it was actually a bad move and we should end the war, and 19% said it depends on the terms. And I would actually say I think it's actually a good move, because even though we're having a problem, obviously, with the Strait of Hormuz situation, generally speaking, the Iran problem had to be addressed. I was in favor of dealing with that problem, but I was not in favor of going in without a plan to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. That's really where my main grievance lies with the entire situation, is over the lack of a plan with the Strait of Hormuz. Outside of that, I think they're doing pretty decent when it comes to striking targets and also taking out the Iranian military capabilities. So I would say there's really not much to talk about. I mean, that's the whole reason the war started in the first place. The U.S. was negotiating with Iran, and Iran kept giving us the middle finger each time we tried to come to a reasonable solution. So, I mean, what are we doing? Getting together to talk about what? It's like pretty much nothing at this point. That's why the war started. So I'm with the 55%. Yeah, I think it was a good move. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'll be with the 55%. I don't think that we should have talks with the Islamic Republic of Iran until they start giving some incredibly significant concessions, or until we are able to achieve the complete strategic advantage on them on every front. Right now, we're winning over the skies of Iran in striking IRGC forces, besieged forces, and the Iranian government on a daily. However, the Iranians are able to kind of balance that out for now, even still, by closing the Strait of Hormuz. Because while we are completely laying waste to the Iranian military and the Iranian government, they are trying to lay waste to the global oil markets, which could cause major damage to us here on the home front and all of our allies as well. So generally, at this moment, the Iranians aren't willing to talk because they are holding the Strait of Hormuz, and we aren't willing to talk because we're absolutely obliterating them everywhere but the Strait of Hormuz. So here's what needs to happen before talks can even be attempted. We have to clear out the Strait of Hormuz, which we're now going to be working on finally. And once the Strait of Hormuz is cleared out, the Iranians will not have any cards that are held at this point to be able to hold out any longer. As far as the strategic front, they're going to be losing on all fronts. They're losing everywhere but the Strait of Hormuz. And once they lose the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, it's basically over for the Iranians militarily. At that point, they're just sitting around and getting blown away every day by the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Naval Air Arm, which isn't a good position to be in. And at that point, they're just awaiting a slow death. For at some point, the CIA will find them, and then the U.S. Air Force will drop a JDAM on their forehead. So nobody really wants to wait around for that once a situation like that develops. So I think that we'll probably start to see talks begin, or at least the Iranians will start to get very serious in significant concessions to the U.S., once the Strait of Hormuz and its blockade is lifted, because this is literally the only bargaining chip they have, and that's why they're not negotiating with us right now, is because they're holding it, and in their mind somewhere, they're probably gaming it out that maybe if they try and hold out for a little bit longer, maybe they can inflict some larger losses on the U.S. Navy or the U.S. Air Forces that'll be operating in that area and keep holding the blockade in effect. And by doing that, maybe the U.S. will give, at least in willpower, before they give. That's what they're working off of right now. So I hope that does address it the best I can. I also see some people saying, what concessions? Concessions, I wouldn't know. Because generally, if we're going off of the original war goal, the concession that the Iranians would have to make, at least the Islamic regime, is that they would basically have to capitulate and admit, one, open defeat, and secondly, they would also have to see that their government transitions from the Islamic regime into a totally different form of government that the Iranian public would want to have. So generally, that would probably be the concession that we'd be looking for in a perfect world, but currently, the U.S. administration has changed basically everything about our originally stated war goals, and they're trying to work off of the idea that they just want to cut Iran down to size and then see that a yes man is selected within the Islamic regime, and then the Islamic regime just continues on business as usual. That's what we've been seeing for now.
That's not going to happen. I think, like we've discussed before, I think they were trying to hope that maybe it would go like Venezuela. They were hoping if they got rid of Khomeini, kind of like they got rid of Maduro inside of Venezuela, they were hoping that the underling that would take his position would be very docile, I guess you could say, and sort of passive, and would generally maybe work with the United States. But like we've been saying for ages, the Iranian government is nothing like the Venezuelan government. The Iranian government is consisting of fanatics. The Venezuelan government is not really fanatics necessarily. They're more along the lines of just probably low level idiots. Let's just put it that way. But the Iranians are fanatics. So to expect whoever was going to take Khomeini's place to be reasonable, that was a massive blunder in reasoning right there. So the guy that took charge is Khomeini's son, and obviously his son was indoctrinated by his father. So he's going to be as crazy, if not crazier, than his father. So that's not going to go the way they hoped. In fact, I would liken it to basically getting a young version of Kim Jong-un to a certain degree. But this guy's actually 2 or 3 times worse than Kim Jong-un, if he's even still alive right now, because we had heard that he was apparently crippled in the recent strikes, and he might have been in the hospital possibly. So we don't even know if he's alive, but at least in symbology, he's supposed to be in charge of the country, but he's a lunatic, to say the least.
Also, on top of that, I see a lot of people saying, well, you're applying logic to the Iranian government in that if we lift the blockade on the strait, then they have no bargaining chip and they'll have to negotiate. And maybe I am. Y'all actually have a good point with that. Maybe I am applying a little bit too much logic. Maybe they'll continue to be fueled by radical ideology or their theology, or their radical theology more so, to keep going on even in the midst of insurmountable odds at that point, the fact that they basically lost on all fronts at that point. But the thing about that is, folks, is that at that point, there's no real pressure. I mean, there's no pressure to do really anything to the degree or intensity that we're doing right now. As long as we ensure that the shipping lane at the Strait of Hormuz remains clear and that oil traffic is still flowing out of that region and into the region, and also if we just keep slowly bombing away the Iranian government and its top officials, we'll eventually see that enough Iranian top officials are bombed out, quite literally, to the point that one of them will come up to the head of the reins of the country and he'll go, you know what? I don't want to die. One of them's eventually going to say that. They all can't sit there and want to be martyred. Clearly, one of them, at some point, is going to decide that they don't want to have their head on the chopping block next, and then once that happens, then negotiations will ensue. But after we generally lift the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, you really don't have to conduct any significant actions at that point to the degree that we're doing every day right now, because most of their transporter-reactor launchers have been destroyed. We're still targeting their drone forces, which do pose a threat within the area, but it's diminishing week over week, not to the degree that the TELs did, but it's still diminishing. So some U.S. air operations just trying to target those drone forces and launchers at a lower intensity would generally see that they would eventually start to be mitigated to an incredibly small threat. And after that, they can't pose a threat to any of our forces in the region. They can't pose a threat to any of our allies. And then we can just slowly go around and try and take satellite photography and see where any large motorcades are that look like they may have a government official in it, hit it with an airstrike, wait for the Iranians to announce that someone was martyred, figure out who it was, and wash, rinse, and repeat until we eventually get a guy that doesn't want to die, and then you'll start negotiating with the U.S. government. That's really how that would kind of work out in the long run at this point.
And you always had to be very leery of a regime that has a cardboard printer, because right now Iran's literally printing their leaders from like cardboard cardstock right now. Like they keep just printing them out over and over and over. I think Mujtaba, who's the current alleged Ayatollah of Iran, I guess you could say, the only sighting we've ever seen of that guy in public has been a cardboard cutout. That's been it. So I mean, he hasn't been seen at all. He's scared to death to come out if he's even still alive at this point. So we've heard rumors that he could be deceased as of right now. So I don't even know really who's running the country, honestly.
I honestly don't know who's running the country either, but I do have to tell y'all, folks. Apparently, in Iran, they go to the cardboard factory and they figure out who's leading the country next by whatever face is printed out on the cardboard cutout, which is really one hell of a way to pick a leader. I mean, that is one of the most democratic ways I've ever heard. Let the cardboard decide, and it really does. But beyond that, we've also been able to get some other interesting news out of the area of the Arabian Sea. We were able to see today that the USS John Finn was firing off some tomahawks at the Iranians today. This is from the front of the USS John Finn, which is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. Here is actually, let's see, hang on, hold up. Let me see if I can pull this up for y'all. John Finn. Let me see here. Sorry, folks, I had to go and pull that up. Here you go. Here's the USS John Finn. It's an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. This is actually, I believe, one of the newer ones, and it is. It actually was launched and commissioned in 2017, and its home port is Yokosuka, Japan. So the guys on that ship, they have a great time on shore leave, because Japan is a pretty cool place to visit. But beyond that, we were able to see the John Finn firing off some tomahawks today from its forward-mounted VLS near to the bow of the vessel. You can actually see the main gun, the 127mm main gun, right there in front of us on the camera. But here is the clip. Look at those tomahawks fly. Here goes another.
Look at that. That's why the U.S. is great, because we have the tomahawk.
Man, this is why free healthcare will never exist in this country. Make sure to pay your taxes, folks, before April 15th. We can see here another launch of a tomahawk. Oh, look, a little bit of smoke left over from the last launch right there.
You know what's crazy about the price of the Tomahawk? A single Tomahawk cruise missile costs about $2 to $2.5 million, with some of them reaching up to $3.6 million, depending on the type of Tomahawk, I guess you could say. That's literally the cost of a small building, or an office building, basically, in one single missile. So that's a lot of money being spent right there, but they're very potent, as you can tell.
Yeah, they are quite potent. You know what's interesting, folks, is that the price of weapon systems can fluctuate wildly for the very same missile just because of the batch number or batch order that was given that missile was in. If the batch orders are small, the missiles are generally a lot more expensive, but if we fill out a batch order for, say, thousands of them or hundreds of them at a time, just due to the economies of scale, the price is able to be spread out over a longer production run, and that means that cost per unit, it becomes a good bit lower, especially in the larger batch orders. So we don't know which batch orders these Tomahawks came from, but they could range anywhere in between about 1.7 million to about 3 million or upwards of that per missile, which is about the cost of a single Russian main battle tank each, which is pretty crazy to think about. But we can see them continuing to launch the missiles here. This is actually from the rear mounted VLS on the vessel. This is more towards the midship section, or kind of getting towards the stern, near to the helipads at the stern of the vessel. And we can see here the continued launching of the Tomahawks. I gotta say, folks, I just want to make sure to play the full clip, because it's actually wildly interesting to watch the VLS cells at work the way they normally operate. It's just a really interesting sort of a system. But I'll end the clip there, because it literally is just a whole bunch of VLS doors popping open and then they're firing off the Tomahawks. I mean, it's cool, but we can only watch that like a dozen times or so. But moving on from that, we also got to see up in the northern Red Sea some carrier ops on board the USS Gerald R. Let's take a little look at that. And let me see here really quickly. There we go. Here goes the E-2 Hawkeye. This is a carrier-borne AWACS aircraft, by the way. I'm not gonna lie, man, if I was in that plane, and I'm not gonna lie, man, you think about the sensation of taking off on that thing. If you felt it dip like that right there, and then also turn to the left, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, my initial instinct would be that this plane is going down into the water. That's what I would think.
Yeah, I would think so too, honestly.
but it was a successful launch. We also see an EA-18 Prowler taking off there as well to conduct electronic warfare support for the attack forces. We can also see those on the flight deck. I forgot what the name of that thing is, but they are able to actually see the landing aircraft from there and also the launches as well. I think this is for the flight deck. I think it's the commander or shift lead or something along those lines. I'm not really sure the exact position. We can also see here this FA-18 Super Hornet also getting ready to launch as well.
Very loud situation.
Yes, very loud.
As you see here, they're trying to heat up the metal.
As you can see, folks, they're using about the average force in terms of heat out of the back of the Super Hornet as it takes to cook a DiGiorno pizza. And I've got to ask you, folks, why is it that no matter what, the DiGiorno pizzas, when you put them in the oven, they either come out undercooked or they come out burnt. There's never a time when they're like perfectly cooked. Like they're almost always burnt around the edges if the inside's cooked somewhat well. I find that odd. And there goes another Super Hornet. It looks like they're all growlers, actually, from what I could tell, but that's the end of the clip, and nice to see the carrier ops of the Gerald R. Ford. I also got to say that tonight, folks, I've been looking at the chat. I mean, the flood of bots has been insane tonight, man. I've been seeing the banhammer swinging left and right the whole night, but it's been crazy. I've seen this, folks. I've been getting a laugh out of this. We literally have people coming in here either saying that we are a hardline MAGA channel or that we have TDS, literally all within the same bars of chat. Like, one chat will come in and be like, this is a MAGA show, and then like 3 chats down I'll say we have TDS. It's like these people don't know what they're watching. They're watching high quality news, which baffles the mind of those who are ultra political. But moving us on down and out of this area of the southern Red Sea, we've also been able to see some further developments within the rest of the Middle East, particularly around the area of Iran, where we've been able to see some major strikes unfolding at this moment. And we are about to get into that news here in just a second, but before we do, I do have to say that we are absolutely enthralled to see that about 30,000 people were here with us at the peak tonight of the show, and about 140,000 people have watched this stream over the course of about the past hour. I've got to say that we're entirely honored and incredibly appreciative of each and every single one of you watching. We're always honored to be able to run a high-quality news show for all of y'all, and we hope that the coverage and the analysis tonight has been top-notch as usual. I have to say, humongous thanks to everyone for watching so far once again. And before we get on into the major strikes that we've been able to see slamming down inside of Iran, and also the Iranian counterattacks, which have caused damage within Kuwait, Iraq, and other locations, I do want to make sure that we get a couple of questions from the chat, at least just 3, before we move on. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first 3 super chats of the night, the first one is going to be from Chris Feilbach, who puts in a $100 support. And thank you very much, Chris, for always supporting the channel very bigly. And we do appreciate that very, very much, as always. And Chris said, today's orb word of the day is orb. And orbs are typically spherical objects that sometimes glow, but sometimes fly over enemy airspace prior to the USA raining down munitions that send our enemies straight to hell. And also, should I change my ham radio call sign to KO6 ORB?
That's a good question. And I mean, maybe you couldn't. Yes, I think I think you could. I think you should. And I also got to say a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And thank you for sharing the orb word of the day, which is the word orb. I've got to thank you massively for that support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to have the orbs to get on air every single night and to be able to cover this news. It's really something crazy, folks, to see how this channel has been doing these days. Our news coverage is pretty much getting well on up into the area of about the top 10s for live streams on YouTube that are being run out of the United States for viewership, and that's been going on for weeks now, and we haven't really even dropped out of the top 15 rarely over the past 2 to 3 weeks. I've got to say that we're massively appreciative of each and every single one of y'all who have been watching the show over these weeks. I hope that we've been able to do all of y'all honor by covering this news with the highest quality coverage we can, and not holding back any punches, saying that things are good when they're good and not so good when they're not. I got to thank everyone, though, for sticking with us and really enjoying this channel, because we are very proud to say that we were one of the top names in news on YouTube by as far as viewership is going. And I also got to say that we're highly honored to know that so many people also think that it's high quality, not just because so many people are watching, but because our coverage is actually pretty decent. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it is time for us to move on and into the next one.
In our next super chat goes to Jennifer Rudig. And thank you very much, Jennifer, for that $300 super chat, by the way. It's absolutely massive support right there. And we do appreciate that very much. That is the largest one of the night, a massive support. And Jennifer said, I cannot thank you enough for all the hard work you put in daily to give us the best analysis possible. I've told everyone I know about you guys, and no one believes that you're in your 20s. And amazing.
And I gotta thank you for the unbelievably massive support, Jennifer. That is incredibly kind of you. And we thank you massively for throwing in massive support like that, because every bit of support helps this channel to keep running, whether it's $1 or $500, which is the largest super chat that anyone can throw in. And I gotta say that we are wildly appreciative of your kind words. And also, we're very proud to hear that you're sharing us around with all of your friends and letting them know about our show. I gotta say, it's really something else to know that a lot of people are watching. I actually heard a funny story, man. I didn't tell you about this, but last night I was actually talking to a fella that I know that works up in Washington, not at the CIA. I have to make that clear. But he works up in Washington, and he was telling me that he had his brother actually, I believe, is in the Navy at a naval station, kind of in the Washington area. And funnily enough, he actually watches the show, and he didn't know that. So he told his brother, he was like, the one that's at the naval station, he was like, yeah, I know that guy. And he, he's the dude. He's like, oh my God, I watch him every day. So we're incredibly honored to know that lots of folks are watching us from all around, either currently serving, former serving, or just interested citizens at large that want to know what's going on around the world and America's interests. And I got to say that we're wildly appreciative of folks like you for your incredible support as well, because your support helps us to be able to be the voice of news for all those people who want to hear what's going on every day. If it wasn't for viewer support, we wouldn't be able to keep this show running. We run no ads on these streams, and we have no sponsorships on these streams. Viewer support is basically our bread and butter and how we keep our lights on, pay our bills, eat Costco chickens, and keep everything running behind the scenes that make it possible for us to get up every day and dedicate basically our entire lives to trying to cover the highest quality news we can. And I got to thank you massively for the kind words and the support, because you're helping to make this a reality. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be on into the rest of the news. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the last super chat of the segment is going to go to none other than Bobby, also known as LC39A, another longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Bobby, for that $100 support. Also extremely generous. And Bobby said, how about a fundraiser for the BRICS countries just to make it fair? LOL.
Maybe a Lego brick country. Like, maybe we'll do one for them. But I'd have to tell you, I think we're turning the Islamic regime into a good bit of bricks. By the way, a lot of their government buildings are getting scattered, the bricks at least, across a wider area in a debris field. I think that's a pretty decent sort of a fundraiser we could do for BRICS. Eventually, I think that once we see that the Islamic regime hopefully falls, hopefully that'll still be the actual war goal instead of just getting a new mullah, which wouldn't be a great thing to be the supreme leader. If we see that the Islamic regime falls, I think it would be a great thing for us to try and do some form of a fundraiser for a nonprofit that actually will be going into Iran and trying to help out the people in rebuilding their country and trying to stabilize, or at least provide some humanitarian support in the meantime. That would be pretty cool. But as far as BRICS countries, I think the only one we would fundraise for is the Lego brick country, which is Lego City. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news. Moving us on into the news that we have been able to get out of the Islamic Republic of Iran overnight, we have been able to see some interesting developments. For one, we have now been able to hear that the president believes that the new Iranian supreme leader, which is Mujtaba Khamenei, may no longer be alive. That's according to NBC. Now, we don't know if that's true or not, and I do have to say that the president just kind of says stuff, and, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. So, we'll see, but it seems as though there's some sort of belief that Mujtaba Khomeini may also be dead as well. Also, I got to point this out because I know a lot of people have been bringing this up. A lot of people are like, why is it in y'all's thumbnails that y'all put out on this channel? Y'all keep showing the old Khomeini that's been dead for weeks. And the reason why, folks, is because there is no good pictures of Mujtaba Khomeini. Like, they are all made on potato cameras, like disposable cameras from the 90s, so we can't get a good picture of him to use. And secondly, they're kind of dropping like flies, so we kind of have to stick with him, and he's also the most recognizable out of any of the leaders that Iran has had or currently has at the moment, so we just keep using him on the thumbnails. I have to point that out, because it's not like we're trying to do any sort of reverence for the guy. It's just that we all know that everybody in the world knows who Khomeini is. He was the #1 bad guy in Iran, and Mujtaba Khomeini, we can't find a good picture of the guy. I mean, like, he looks terrible in every picture, and they're also like 480p. So what do you do? But anyways, moving on from that, we are going to be getting on into the rest of our news in Tehran, where we also were able to hear that the Space Research Building has been completely destroyed. We got an idea that it was yesterday, but looking at the close-up picture of the ruins of the building today, I don't think they're going to be doing any research about space anymore.
Yeah, I feel like they have plenty of space now to expand because it looks like it needs some help. Also, I think the roof went to space.
You know, I think it did. Man, you know, I heard that somewhere in this building, Matthew, so one Iranian scientist that was trying to work on one of the ICBMs was trying to figure out the key to missile flight, and the U.S. helped him out by allowing him to fly for a short period of time. And you, too, can fly. But you generally don't want that to be happening at the hands of the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah, I think this looks like the ruins of like an ancient civilization or something at this point right here. What was it? What was left of the Iranian space program right here for history?
This unassuming structure within the center of Tehran is the signs of an old and non-existent regime. It is a country of great interest and intrigue. And was it perhaps the presence of aliens that helped Iran to survive for 3 weeks? Find out more after the break.
But anyways,
Honestly.
Moving on from that, we also been able to get a little bit of an additional update from Tehran, letting us see that's the ferry news from the Kerch Strait. I don't know why that's here. Let me delete that because that should be up in the Kerch Strait. And it is. So apparently a link got shared twice, and that was supposed to be another piece of news, folks, and for some reason it didn't copy the link when I copied it, and so I just ended up pasting the same thing for the Kerch Strait twice, and this time in Tehran. But moving on out from that, we'll be getting to that here in a little bit. We have been able to see that down in Isfahan, things have been getting a little bit explosive as well. Kind of like, you know, a family game of Monopoly. Take a look at this. That's Isfahan at the moment.
Holy moly.
Oh, that's pretty rough. You want to see it again? Here you go. Let me get you all this clip. When you see the incoming airstrikes.
Oh.
Oh.
Aye. Somebody got blasted.
Somebody did get blasted. I wonder what happened. Also, here's another clip from even earlier in the day before these strikes, also showing us other strikes that were conducted by the United States today. Let's take a look. I hear a lot of screaming. Oh!
Holy smokes. Was that a tomahawk?
No. Like, that was almost supersonic because you didn't really hear it before it came in. Like, listen, folks. I mean, that came in so fast. Like, the sound was making it to the cameraman after the explosion had already started. He's not that far from it either. I mean, that was a fairly fast ordnance, whatever that was. I wouldn't be able to tell you all what it is. That's beyond my understanding at the moment. Probably not a tomahawk, but it's something else that may be even a little bit faster. Also, by the way, tomahawks have like this distinct jet whining noise that they make whenever they're coming in on a target, and that sounded like a very loud whoosh without any real propulsion. So that might have been a dumb bomb, like a JDAM or something like, well, not a dumb bomb, it's a JDAM, which is a laser-guided dumb bomb that was guided down onto a target, and by the time it was hitting it, it was reaching near supersonic speeds. So pretty impressive right there. And I mean, the damage was unreal. Oh, and there's another one.
Jeez.
Will we get a third?
And they're pulling like an Israel trick with this one. They're taking down the whole block.
I have to tell you all that Netanyahu is not dead. Like, that's been going around all day today. He's not dead. But anyways.
Oh,
Dang! And there's another! And another!
oh! Holy cow! What the hell was that thing that just took off from the ground?
I have no clue.
Just a stray. I don't know why this guy's panicking, filming like this whole thing. Like, keeps jumping to the ground. He acts like a missile's hitting nearby or something.
You know, he's acting like bombs are going off. It's like, easy, buddy. It's not a war or anything. See, the guy's breathing heavy and everything. I mean, hell, it's not like bombs are going off in front of him. He needs to get real. Grow some balls. But that's the end of that clip. And once again, showing heavy strikes within Isfahan. Also, by the way, folks, I'm being sarcastic. Obviously, everyone's going to jump on the deck if there's bombs going off that are like 2,000 pounders and they're coming in at a near supersonic speed. I mean, everyone's going to hit the deck. I'm obviously being sarcastic on that one, but still, heavy hits in Isfahan over the course of the day. Moving us further on and towards the west, we also were able to hear that there had been a claim today that, according to the president, we've knocked out most of their missiles, we've knocked out most of their drones, we knocked out their manufacturing of missiles and drones largely. Within 2 days, it'll be totally decimated. Now, I gotta say that that's a little optimistic because, I mean, he was kind of saying that like 3 weeks ago on day 3, and it's 3 weeks later. So I think that, you know, like, it's mostly true. Like, you know, we have knocked out a lot of their TELs. We are working on their drone forces, and we have knocked out a decent amount of their manufacturing capabilities for drones and missiles, but they're not completely down and out of the fight yet. I would really like to see that these comments stop, because so basically saying every day that it's over, we beat them and they've won, and then the day continues, well, the war continues on for another week or two after that. I mean, you know, it's like, you can only say that so many times before these comments completely lose any sort of luster to them, because it's like, you know, the war's not over. But moving on from that, and on out of that little bit of news, we've also been able to hear within the west, or the rest of Western Tehran, that it appears that the IRGC showed off a little video today of them preparing launches. Oh, and they had that trap beat.
Man, that's like tropical music. That sounded like something you'd hear when you go to the beach. Oh, look at these guys. They have headlamps. Look at that. They're investing now.
You know what it sounded like, Matthew? It sounded like that Super Mario, like Middle Eastern bazaar music. You know what I'm talking about? Like from like the Nintendo games?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Man, you know, next thing you know, man, they're about to start playing like God, Syria, and Bashar. El Basili Wahmahal Al-Ri Sulami Al-Basili Al-Bashar. Man, like, it's like, man, if they start playing that, you know it's
little
over.
Number right there. I never care for that little number.
No, it's a meme. Nobody likes that song. It's a joke. Like, the song is a joke. But whenever you know that they start playing that song, folks, that's when we know that they're about to gas out, because if you ever play that song as a government, you're basically admitting that it's over at this point, and you're just waiting for the end.
And this is footage from today of Iran launching stuff off?
We believe that this is a compilation from several days, actually, but it's one of the few clips that the IRGC has put out recently.
Yeah, it looks like they're firing them from mobile TEL launchers in this video.
I mean, some of these TELs might not even be around today. Like, you know, a lot of them have been hit. We're about to show you all those clips here in a moment. And now we can show them, actually showing some of the clips we've already shown on air before, showing the hits within Israel and such from these weapons. And, like, these clips, by the way, folks, are, like, from, like, a week and a half ago. So I think this is, like, a very long-term montage that they just put together and they're showing right now. Because a lot of these clips, like this one's also quite old as well. So the IRGC is
I wonder how much the Iranians are paying these editors. I wonder how much they're getting on the payroll for this propaganda.
Man, they are being paid in loyalty. But anyways, moving on from that, we also were able to see that the U.S. was also conducting some strikes in Kermanshah today, and we were able to hear that those were decently effective as well. Now it's time for us to move across the border. Oh man, over the border, they say. And it's time for us to move on up into the Kurdish lands of Sulaymaniyah, which is a larger town within northern Kurdish Iraq. We were able to see that there was a massive explosion within this area today, which we believe is Iranian. Oh. Well, there was the sound of it, at least. Moving on from that, we also were able to hear that up in the area of Erbil, there appeared to have been another large fire that happened today because of another major attack by the Iranians. We don't know what that is. And the tisk-tisk noise is one of the most common sound effects that I've heard people in the Middle East make. But moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news, we also have been able to hear of some other significant developments inside of Baghdad. We were able to confirm that the thing that was hit on the roof of the embassy last night was, in fact, a acquisition radar. You can actually see the remains of the radar right there. That is the radar itself, scorched and charred, but still actually largely intact.
Yeah, it looks like. I think they call this thing a giraffe, by the way.
Yes, it actually says it right over there. This is a Giraffe 1X multi-mission radar. These are actually used as an acquisition radar for the CRAMs, which I took a potshot guess at that was probably what the system was being used for, and it turns out that it is correct. It's generally for CRAM tracking of incoming targets. This sort of a radar system, I don't know a lot about it, but to give you all the kind of rundown of how a modern acquisition radar works, this acquisition radar is a step removed from the CRAM's targeting radar and is able to get a picture of the broader scope of the entire area around the CRAM and is able to pick up dozens of incoming air targets. From there, it's able to give its battery commanders a better view of the airspace above them and is better able to vector in the fire from the CRAMs towards targets that may pose a higher threat or are going towards high priority areas of the installation. So generally that's what these sorts of radars are used for. This being knocked out is not great, but it's also not game ending for the air defenses around the embassy. They're just going to have to require a lot more attention and a lot more aptitude and a little bit more luck, but the CRAMs are still capable and operational at this moment and can still defend the airspace around the Baghdad embassy. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult. Moving us on from that, we've also been able to see that the Iranians have shown off something interesting today, and the video was deleted. Moving on from that, we were able to see a fire near to the victory base inside of Iraq, near to the Baghdad International Airport.
Were you looking for the video showing the Iraqi militias firing the FPV drone?
Yes, and it's no longer there. It's gone. Like, they deleted it.
Let me go see if I can grab that, by the way, because that's a pretty big story. Let me see if I can get the...
Yeah, I'd have to see. I also saw someone at Wally saying that another stream today was filled with bots and trolls. I got to say, it's getting unreal. I mean, like, the bots and trolls situation is absolutely crazy. Like, I don't know who in the world's the one running the bot farms out there. Could be the Chinese, the Iranians, the Russians. It could even be people within the U.S. But the amount of bot comments on live streams these days on YouTube is absolutely crazy. Like, it's like,
oh yeah,
like we're getting.
I would agree
tonight.
Yeah, I would agree for sure. I've been deleting them. It's getting old tonight. There's so many of them. I'm having to click. But anyways, though, check the top of the Twitter page. I just reposted that video, by the way, so you can take a look.
Oh, they have music. They have a trap beat to go with it. And so here is the clip that they actually showed of the pro-Iranian aligned FPV drone conducting an attack on the victory base at the Baghdad International Airport.
This drone operator doesn't seem very certain of what he's doing. He seems like just bebopping around.
It seems like he's trying to figure out what is the target instead of kind of knowing what the target actually would be, which gives us an idea that this attack was fairly impromptu and didn't really have a lot of planning going into it.
That is a bad sign, though, that they've started to use FPV drones like Russia's doing. And also, I had heard reports this was a fiber optic, so it couldn't be jammed, apparently.
That's interesting. That's rather interesting, actually.
Which is actually very troublesome because thankfully there's no U.S. forces here at the victory base because it was turned over to, I believe, Iraq's forces. But, you know, if there were U.S. forces here, there's really no way to defend against a fiber optic drone, at least as far as I'm aware.
And this thing is still bebopping around trying to find some sort of a target. I mean, mostly at this part of the base is mostly just service vehicles and kind of like junk piles nearly.
And honestly, Victory Base is kind of like, it's actually still in good shape, even though we've given it away.
Now we see them looking at the hangar here and then skipping over that. And then flying around it. Then looking towards the dumps behind the hangar again. Now it's flying towards
this person's really indecisive about what they're trying to hit right here. No clue. Look at that. Look at that hardened shelter thing right here in front of the camera.
Oh, it looks like he's picked this for the target. Oh, no, he didn't. Actually, he's going to pass that. What the hell is this guy doing? Like, honestly, man.
What the, how come there's nobody at this base? Like, I don't see a single person walking around anywhere, even though there's vehicles here.
Man, that's because like the Iraqis hardly use it. I mean, the Iraqis really don't have a military big enough to use this base, although it was handed over to them. And then they just hit that kind of hardened dome thing. You know, Matthew, I remember that in our hometown, Matthew, of Wetumpka, like before they built the Wind Creek Casino, they had like a structure that looked almost like this thing that was the casino. Don't you remember that?
Yeah, I think so.
Man, I swear that literally is the thing from our hometown. Like that looks like the exact same structure, but they did hit it. We cannot confirm any casualties. It doesn't appear that there were any, but they did hit a structure and catch it on fire today, which is about all of the damage they were able to conduct within that area. Now, moving us on over into Israel, we were able to hear that the Israelis are now warning today that they are running critically low on missile interceptors, which is, something that we've been hearing for a lot of countries in the area, and it appears that it's finally affecting Israel. We've also been able to see the Israelis were continuing their strikes within Beirut today, in the Dahia suburb, and we're continuing their air campaign, so it does appear that that's still an ongoing development at the moment inside of Lebanon. Now, with all that said, and all of that done, it's time for us to finally move out of the Middle East, folks. We've covered everything there. It's time for us to move on into East Asia, where we have been able to see that the Republic of China's armed forces have put out an update today. As a part of the Army's ongoing CTC 2.0 new style base evaluation, Taiwan's 542nd and 584th Combined Arms Brigades conducted an urban counterattack exercise in Hsinchu. The 542nd CAB deployed M60A3 tanks and CM34 infantry fighting vehicles to draw the simulated opposing force into built-up terrain, conducted close combat, restricted space fighting, and established layered fires while covering the 584th CAB's M1A2T Abrams as they executed a pass-through exploitation attack. Evaluators introduced elements such as blocked routes, communications interference, and enemy prisoner of war handling that stress command decision-making under simulated combat conditions. So we do see that there is infantry exercises ongoing by the Republic of China's armed forces on the island of Taiwan for the eventual preparation for the possible Chinese invasion that'll be coming up at some point in the future. Pretty nice to see that they're taking island defense incredibly seriously, and they are working quite truly around the clock at this point to be able to try and prepare for the eventual war that is going to happen with China once they attempt to retake the island. We've also been able to hear, folks, that the long dry streak that has lasted for weeks, literal weeks, around Taiwan, where there's been literally not a single Chinese warship and not a single Chinese aircraft, and I'm speaking of the PLAN and the PLAAF, by the way, has finally ended. Today we were able to get an alert from Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense as of the following. 26 sorties of PLA aircraft and 7 PLAN vessels operating around Taiwan were detected up until 6 a.m. today. 16 out of 26 sorties entered Taiwan's northern, central, and southwestern air defense identification zones, and the ROC armed forces have monitored the situation and responded. China is back to conducting low-level coercion efforts as a standard, so that has resumed. So it does seem that the analysis was correct. China wasn't preparing for an imminent invasion when they stopped those actions. It appears that they're generally trying, at least at the moment, to figure out what was going on in the world at large now that the Iran war had started, and to figure out how to work from there. And once they see that the situation isn't wildly out of control and increasingly unstable, they're now back to conducting their usual low-level coercion efforts. Moving us on out of East Asia, it's now time for us to move over to the United States. We have big news for you carrier lovers out there. The USS Nimitz will not be decommissioned now. It has been given...
yeah, it's a celebration. Look at that. They're keeping the Nimitz. Is that how it really looks?
Man, I gotta say, yes.
Oh, man. Maybe a fresh coat of what is it, like asphalt, or maybe a little like fresh coat of something to like spruce up the deck. That might do some help.
Well, Matthew, it's an old ship. It's about 50 years old. There's only so much they can do to it, Matthew. What do you want? What do you want? But beyond that, though, we've been able to hear good news, folks. According to a report from Breaking Defense, the U.S. Navy has officially delayed the decommissioning of the aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz, until at least March of 2027 to maintain a fleet size of 11 active carriers. Its replacement will be the USS John F. Kennedy, CVN-79, which is scheduled to be delivered to the Navy in the middle of 2027. So, it does appear the USS Nimitz will be in the Navy's register for a little while longer as an active and operational aircraft carrier. Pretty cool. The Nimitz was the first of its class, and generally actually quite literally, every single aircraft carrier except for the Gerald R. Ford is a part of the Nimitz class. So this was the first of its type, a revolutionary design in carrier, I guess you could say carrier technology and developments, and so it's pretty interesting to see it will actually have a stay of execution for about 1 more year before it's finally decommissioned and then eventually sent to the scrappers. Moving us on down and into Cuba, we've also been able to hear of some further civil unrest within the country. In the town of Moron, we were able to hear that the citizens have finally decided that they don't want to be morons, and they've raided the Communist Party headquarters in the city and burned it to the ground.
Wow.
Well, I mean, you know.
Man, that's like a freaking mob, like with the pitchforks that you hear about in the movies and stuff like that, with the torches and stuff. It's like, it's really, honestly, that's the type of mob you'd expect out of Cuba.
It kind of does seem like that, and it also appears that the Communist Party headquarters is generally burned down to the ground at the moment inside of Moron. It appears that the Cuban government has really been taken by surprise by this sort of a development, and we were able to hear a statement from the Cuban president today, which I'll read to y'all right here. This is Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez, who is the president of Cuba. But here's what he stated. It is understandable that the prolonged blackouts cause distress in our town as a consequence of the U.S. energy blockade, cruelly intensified in recent months. And the complaints and demands are legitimate, as long as they are carried out with civic responsibility and respect for public order. What will never be understandable, justified, or tolerated is the violence and vandalism that threaten citizen tranquility and the security of our institutions. For vandalism and violence, there will be no impunity. Generally saying that the Cuban government is going to be cracking down on people that are burning down Communist Party headquarters from here on. So they got away with one. Now will they get away with 2? And we'll have to see. Will the Cuban protesters show who the real moron is? We'll have to find out. We do have to tell y'all folks that the Cuban protests and riots in the country are mostly peaceful, and they are just voicing their frustrations with the Cuban government by burning down the Communist Party headquarters and looting a couple of stores within the area. But beyond that, mostly peaceful. Moving us on out of Cuba and out of that situation, we are going to be getting up to Washington. But before we do, I do understand that a lot of people are talking about what might be happening next within the island nation of Cuba. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so now the riots are back once again. These are anti-regime riots, according to what we're hearing. And now that Cuba's erupted pretty much into this, and now the buildings are getting torched, the people are out there in the streets with pitchforks, and it's chaos. And also people are peeling out with their motorcycles too. What happens next? 50% said Cuba will suffer a revolution, while 27% said the U.S. will intervene and take over, and 15% said nothing will happen. So right now, it seems like the Cuban government is in secret talks with the United States to try to come to some agreement. We don't know what that agreement's going to look like. We don't even know what they're discussing. But there's some talk about maybe some type of partnership with the United States or something of that nature. I don't think. Well, let me phrase it a different way. If the guy in Cuba comes to a deal with the United States, there probably won't be any type of intervention. But if he doesn't, there probably will be some intervention of some sort. So I'm on the 26%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I would generally be with the 26%. I think that the U.S. is probably going to try and conduct some form of military intervention because that's the way everything's been going this year, so that would be the decent likelihood to expect. So moving on from that and on into Washington, we've also been able to get a couple of additional updates out of Washington today. According to the President of the United States today, Russia is perhaps giving information, perhaps they're not. Moving on from that, we've also been able to hear that apparently outflows are reaching record highs. U.S. financial funds posted a record $3.8 billion in outflow in the week ending Wednesday. This surpasses the previous record set during April 2025 sell-off and the 2022 bear market and the 2020 pandemic crash. As a result, the 4-week moving average of outflows is up to negative $2 billion, the largest since 2022. Furthermore, bank loan funds have recorded a negative $2.5 billion outflow, the highest since April of 2025. This also marks the 3rd largest weekly withdrawal since 2020. Investors are dumping financial stocks at a record pace. Not really a good sign. But moving on from that and out of the United States of America, it's now time for us to move on and over into Europa. we have some crazy stuff that's happened here today. So let us begin. First, Switzerland is now denying U.S. aircraft use of their airspace, and Switzerland has closed this airspace for U.S. military flights flying directly into the Middle East linked to the Iran war, citing that they are neutral, and therefore they can't allow that stuff to happen over their airspace. Before people start going off on the Swiss, they do this to everybody. Like, they hardly even support Ukraine. Like, they hardly do anything for anyone. And when it comes to a war, they're militantly neutral. They still are. And so this is nothing that's unexpected. This was expected from the Swiss. But moving on from that, we've also been able to hear something crazy going on down in Serbia today. We've been able to hear that the Serbs have had what we can only describe as a once-in-a-generation crash out. They had a crash out back in the 90s, which many of y'all remember because that wasn't such a fun time in the Balkans. But it appears that Vucic is now having another generational crash out, meaning that we're averaging about one Serb crash out every 25 years. Not that bad. I mean, you know, it could be worse. We could be seeing a Serb crash out every year, but we're only seeing them every generation, so that's not too bad. But the Serbian president, Aleksandar Vucic, stated that Croatia, Albania, and Kosovo are allegedly preparing to attack Serbia. According to him, these countries are waiting for an escalation of the conflict between Russia and Europe and hope that global chaos and the war in the Middle East will provide them with an opportunity to act. Vucic also confirmed that Serbia possesses hypersonic ballistic missiles and emphasized that the country has no intention of joining NATO. Now, I have to say something really quickly. If Serbia can even possess hypersonic ballistic missiles, how technologically advanced are those in reality? I mean, have y'all seen Serbia? Like, have y'all really looked around Serbia recently? I mean, it's not exactly like a very modern or advanced country. I mean, it looks like it's still in the times of Tito when he was running Yugoslavia. And for some reason, they also are able to make hypersonic ballistic missiles. I mean, come on. I mean, you know, they can't be that hard to make. But outside of that, though, it appears that he has stated, and I want to make sure to name the countries, Croatia, Albania, and then Kosovo. So let me show you all these. Here is Croatia, up here, it's this country that stole all the coastline from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then here's Albania, and then that's Kosovo, which is technically not even really a separate country. It's more of like a semi-independent region of Serbia, but they're saying that they're planning on some sort of an invasion or an armed attack or something like that. I would be honest with y'all, I'm kind of doubting it. From what I know, this isn't the 90s anymore, and we're not in the middle of the collapse of Yugoslavia and the Serb wars that happened back then and all of the massacres and genocides that the Serbs did, or what they called ethnic cleansing back in the day. I don't really think we're around in these times. So I think that Vucic's just having a generational crash out. I gotta be honest with y'all, the Serbs seem to have a lot of these crash outs, and I also have to remind y'all that it was a Serb crash out way back in 1914 that led to the beginning of World War I and basically everything that the modern world is all about these days. I gotta say, if the Serbs would just chill out for like maybe 50 years, the world would be in a much better place. Like a way better place. Because think about it, folks. How many times has the Serbs legitimately crashed out and made things worse in world history? I mean, it's every time. I mean, like, World War I is the best example. They literally shot Archduke Ferdinand, and that literally is what started World War I. If they hadn't done that, World War I would have happened at a later date, and things would be a lot different these days than what they are right now.
Go back to that picture of that guy, that Vucic of Serbia. Let's see that picture. You don't think he's crashing out because of that chin line, do you? That's a pretty weak-looking chin line.
Hold up, man. I gotta go pull up what he looks like, dude. He's literally... he is literally the living Chudjack. Like, he is this dude right here.
I mean, he really is. He looks. Let's see him again. Let's see him one more time. Let's see him.
Bro.
Come on, let's see. Honestly, he's got the glasses. He's got the chin line. He's got everything.
The hairline.
Also, isn't this guy friendly to Putin? By the way, this guy right here.
Yeah, he's like heavily friendly. Like the Serbs have this little special relation thing that they have going on with the Russians that they've been having going on for hundreds of years. This is really interesting, kind of bizarro thing. But yeah, they're like huge friends with the Russians.
Yeah. Also, I don't know what it is, but that guy just seems like it's sort of off to me for some reason. Like, it's part of it is because he's sort of like chummed up to Russia to a certain degree. That's obviously part of it, but I don't know. Like, it just seems to me like it's kind of like Serbia, kind of like Hungary, kind of like that whole situation. I just don't know about him.
You know, I also got to say, someone asked, "What are you trying to get at?" But exactly what I said. Like, are you deaf? Like, if the Serbs would literally just chill out and stop being idiotic at the governmental level for like 50 years, the world would be a much better place. We probably would have cured cancer by now. There probably wouldn't be any genocides that ever happened in the Balkans. Like it would generally be a legitimately better world if the Serbs would just stop doing stupid stuff like every 25 to 50 years, because they've literally done that endlessly. The only time they didn't do that was when Tito was in charge of Yugoslavia and Serbia was just a part of Yugoslavia. That was like literally the only time they didn't crash out and do something ridiculously stupid. Every other time, they're basically coming up with something that creates a problem every 25 years. And they come up with them, like out of the blue. Like if y'all don't know, the whole thing that happened back in the 90s happened because some Serb, I can't even really describe what happened, but a glass bottle ended up somewhere it shouldn't be, and it bursted inside of the Serb. And when he went to the hospital, they went, "Oh my God, what happened? Like, this is gruesome." He was like, "Oh, some Bosnian did it to me," and he like completely lied about it. And then that started the hyper-nationalists in Serbia on a literal genocide against the Bosnians. And it was this whole thing. Like, that literally started from then. It's like, if they would just not do ridiculous stuff, we'd be great. Like things would be fine in the Balkans. We would finally see peace in the Balkans. But moving on from that and out of this stupidity, I'm sure that might turn into something here later. Who knows? But moving on out of that, we also have been able to hear some pretty big news up near Sweden. And I want to make sure really quickly, folks, that this is a different vessel. And it is not a different vessel. For some reason, we were able to report on this again today because we have new footage. But it appears that the Swedes have apparently seized the tanker that they boarded yesterday for sanctions evasions, from what we were able to tell today. They boarded it and inspected it yesterday and stopped the vessel, but I believe as of today, they've now officially seized the vessel.
That's a pretty big seizure right there. I still wonder if Russia's going to do anything about that.
Man, honestly, I'm wondering as well.
Probably not, honestly. Other than starting World War III, I'm not sure really what they can do, honestly.
You see them there wandering around. And we see them also boarding with a boat. Man, that was one of those boats right there with the 3 outboard motors. Shoo! Thank God they weren't in the Caribbean. They probably would have been blown up. But anyways, you see them boarding the vessel, having to scale basically like the 70-foot tall side of the tanker right there, and getting on board. But moving on from that, it's time for us to get out of that little news near Sweden and on into Moscow. We've been able to confirm a record-sized attack on Moscow for this year. The Ukrainians have really given it to them. We were able to hear that according to the reports from inside of Moscow, we were able to hear as follows. The largest Ukrainian drone attack on Moscow and the surrounding region this year, today, air defenses shot down 62 drones as they approached the capital. In the village of Resudovo, in the Troitsky district, a grandmother and granddaughter went skiing in the forest. According to them, drones flew overhead at approximately 1:50 p.m. Explosions were also heard near the Favorite shopping center and the Conversia construction company, the village of Resudovo, and the village of Shishkin Les. In Korolev, Moscow region, a local resident saw a Ukrainian UAV shoot down 200 meters away. He managed to take his child to his garage. In the Mikhailovo-Yartsevskoye settlement, a resident saw a drone shot down over his garages. 2 drones were shot down near the central ring road. 1 crashed across a field. Explosions were also heard in the Krasnopokorsky district, Dubna, and Volokolamsk. UAV flying towards Moscow was shot down in the Kaluga region. So generally a report of most of the drones that got shot down, and we also have a little bit of video of some of the drones that were conducting the attack today. Here's one of them. It's a Liudi!
Flying right over, look at that.
And here's another one, boy.
Шакал гребаный. Сейчас ПВОшка сработает.
Shakal Robani.
That's crazy too. No air defense anywhere to be seen.
Not a drop of it, Matthew. Not a drop of it. What a tragedy. This was really a wake-up call for Putin. And so Putin is now starting to further increase the defenses around his mansions, which are everywhere but Moscow. So, according to what we've been able to hear today, Putin is panicking of the threat of a drone attack now, because of possibly this attack or all the prior attacks, and a security zone is being created around his residence. The Russian Federal Protection Service has proposed creating a security zone covering more than 3 square kilometers around Putin's residence, the Bocharovruchi in Sochi. This was reported by the publication Agentstvo, hard to say that word. In this zone, the display of banners, the use of items resembling weapons, the construction of helicopter pads, car and motorcycle repairs, animal breeding, and waste disposal will be prohibited, because clearly two sheeps getting freaky with it is clearly a threat to Putin's security and safety. Additionally, drone flights and anchoring of watercraft will be banned except for one section of the promenade. So quite interesting. I gotta say though, what's up with the banning of animal breeding? Where in the world does that come in to be a significant threat?
Oh, I could make a joke, but I'll refrain though. I don't want to get too crude with it.
We are not going to be allowing these damn animals to breed near our great leader Vladimir Putin, believe. It's like, who the hell is breeding animals in the middle of this city? Like, where in the, like, wasn't that something that's done in the countryside, like in a farm or something? Like, I don't think that's being done in Sochi City. Like, I don't know what's up with that one, but that one's quite odd. Also, apparently they're banning car and motorcycle repairs. So if your car breaks down here, you just got to abandon it. There's no towing it or repairing it or anything, I would suppose. And also, for some reason, for just random people, you can't build helicopter pads. Like everyone's just out there trying to build their backyard helicopter pad someday. And also, apparently, the display of banners, aka gang signs, is also prohibited as well. So you will not be able to pull up and wrap the colors of the Crips and the Bloods near Putin. That'll be unacceptable. Also, waste disposal will also be prohibited. So taking out the trash, impossible. Just hoard the trash inside of your house and pray that you eventually don't get buried in the rot and filth. So I have a feeling this place is going to reek, and also there's going to be a lot of animals that could have been born that will no longer be born because of the restrictions. But moving on from that, we have also been able to hear a lot of people talking about this development at the moment, and a lot of people are wondering what's going on with this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so now that the coup fears inside of Moscow are still ramping up as we speak, we did see in that post that the FSB is planning to expand security zones around Putin's houses, which already had pretty good security and also air defense galore. So, what are your thoughts? 54% said Putin is simply panicking with paranoia, and it's probably not backed up with fact. 19% said it seems like it could be serious, and 15% said a Russian coup is actually imminent, and that's why he's taking these actions. So this is just further proof, in my opinion, that something is going to be happening inside of Russia that's going to probably piss off the people badly. That's my guess. And pretty much the main thing that could be is probably mass mobilization of some sort. That's probably what they're preparing for, because we're seeing them, like, once again, we've gone over this a couple of times, the mobile internet in Moscow cut off. We've also seen, apparently, they're beefing up security around the mansions of Putin's houses. And also, they're doing all kinds of other measures, like forcing people into the Russian state communications app. And they're also blocking VPNs as well and telling people to report to the FSB office if they want to get on a VPN. So, to me, it seems like they're clearly preparing for censorship of a major sort to prevent some type of uprising in their country. That's my guess. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say that Putin is racked with some sort of paranoia. I mean, the fact that they're banning animal breeding in the middle of a city, like, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. It's just, it's odd. Like, the whole thing is odd. So, I'll be honest with y'all. They're planning for something to happen. I think either he's paranoid or something actually is about to be happening. Also, by the way, folks, I wanted to show y'all around this area because there are some governmental helipads that y'all can see right here. And basically, this entire area is a larger compound for Putin. And they also have these very nice higher-end hotels, at least for Russia, that are in this area. This is an old sanatorium. And, you know, when you hear that word, you think of like an insane asylum. But funnily enough, in the Soviet Union, they would call sanatorium, well, they would call like health resorts and like seaside resorts sanatoriums, which makes me honestly feel like if you're going here, you have like some sort of a severe mental issue and you're being held in for your own safety by the state. Like, it's, I don't know what's up with that, but, you know, here's the outside of it. But generally, this is considered high end in Russia. In America, I think this would be considered a dump. But anyways, moving on out of Sochi, we were able to hear a little bit further north and up in the area of Novorossiysk that there were some strikes on the port. Oh.
Novorossiysk. A terrible place to live.
Man, I tell you, man, I'd hate to live in Novorossiysk, really. I mean, like, let me show y'all Novorossiysk. Y'all want to see a little bit of it? Let me show it to you. Yes.
Actually, that's not bad for Russia, actually. Like, the roads aren't great, but the houses aren't too bad for Russia. This is pretty high end.
let's go down this almost unpaved street. This is really giving like Alabama streets a run for their money. You know, it's like, and this is supposed to be a pretty decent town. I mean, this honestly isn't too bad of a spot. I'm not going to lie. For Russia, this is actually getting way on up there onto the higher. Oh. Someone's a big fan of the old Volkswagens?
I think that is a Volkswagen.
Oh, it is. Huh. Someone's a big fan of them. And also, let's see here. Let me see if I can drop you all down in another spot. Let's go to the north side of town. I wonder what this part looks like right here. I'm not going to lie, folks. Novorossiysk may actually be in the running for one of the best-looking Russian cities. And to be entirely honest with y'all, if y'all looked at this spot in America, a lot of people would think it was a dump. And crazily enough, this is probably one of the best towns that we've ever seen in Russia. I still wouldn't want to live there. But moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news in Novorossiysk, we also were able to see that the Ukrainians are apparently going out of their way to target and hit the ferries in the Kerch Strait. Ukrainian forces are starting to hit them, and overnight, we were able to see that the railway ferry, the Slavyanin, was disabled, and the vessel Avant-Garde was damaged. This, we believe, is the Slavyanin, and this is probably the Avant-Garde. What a tragedy. Very sad, and we'll have to say, very sad to see the Russians' really only way to directly get to Crimea from the rest of the Russian mainland is diminishing at the moment once again. Well, moving on from that, we also were able to see that the Russians finally recovered their patrol boat that was hit a little while ago, or at least what's left of it.
My God, look at that. It's literally a burned out husk.
It is a burned out husk. Like, a lot. Like, you know, y'all want to see what this thing looked like before? They pulled it out of the water today. Let me go pull up a Raptor-class patrol boat and show this to y'all. So, let's see here. Let me get a close-up of this. I need a bigger picture of this. Yeah. A bigger picture will be better. Yes, So, let's see here. Good picture. Yes, here we are. This is what it looked like before it was hit. That's what it looks like now. So, this is a complete
screwed.
loss. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to put some armor all on the dash on this one and resell it. I think the resale value is largely lost on this one. A great shame, Blade. But moving on from that, it's time for us to finally get on and into the news inside of Ukraine. We have been able to hear today that apparently Iran has now directly threatened the state of Ukraine. And according to a statement by the Iranian government, they have threatened to strike Ukraine with drones, alleging that Ukraine has support for Israel. And it makes the entire territory of Ukraine a legitimate target, according to Ibrahim Azizi, head of Iran's Parliamentary Commission on National Security. So now they've
been hitting Ukraine, though. They've been hitting Ukraine with shot heads. They just been giving them to Russia to do it, and Russia carries it out. It's like Iran's been attacking Ukraine for years.
Yeah, you know, a little bit interesting with that one. Also, like, making an enemy of the Ukrainians these days isn't a great idea, because next thing you know, Budanov grows an extra chin, and then the next thing you know, some Ukrainian walks into the hospital room that Mustafa's in, and they go, "Excuse me, I would like to examine the amputation." And then they go, "Oh yes, Bibi, of course, inshallah, go in there." And then he comes out and they hear Mustafa flatlining, and they go, "Wait a minute, who was that?" Like, he's like, maybe not a good idea to mess with the Ukrainians. I mean, the Ukrainians really aren't people to play with. I mean, you know, if we've known anything about them in the war in Ukraine, the Ukrainians are a fairly nifty group of people. Attacking the Ukrainians is probably going to come with some very dire consequences of Looney Tune type proportions on what kind of goofiness they're about to pull off on the Iranians. So probably not. You know, what's crazy, folks, is that the Ukrainians will probably scam Iran out of a couple of million, because the Iranians will say, "We want a hit put out on Zelensky," and they'll fake Zelensky's death and everything and get the couple of million wired to them, and then afterwards Zelensky will come out and be like, "Surprise, it was a lie." Like, and now we're going to use the money to fund drones to bomb Iran. It's like, that is highly likely. I mean, you know, it's not out of the question. They've done something like that before. But moving on from that, it is time for us to move on up into the skies near to Kyiv. We were able to see that the GRU did shoot down a Russian Shahed 136 drone today. And listen to that machine gun purr. A couple of more rounds, and the drone is going down.
Yes. Look at that. That's a good hit.
Also, apparently we have Killa from Tarkov here in the background. Let's take a listen again.
Oh, jeez. That guy's got some power behind that little yell.
Man, I tell you, man, really. I mean, honestly. like it's a bit. Moving on for that clip, we have also been able to see, moving us on closer towards the front and into the Belgrade area, that a Pantsir S-1 missile defense system near to Belgrade was destroyed, very unfortunately today, by Ukrainian fire. Let's take a look at how it was destroyed. Ah, yes. There it is. It's just
In the wide open. Look at him out there. No protection. No protection at all. Just out here. Look at him looking stupid.
Oh, and the radar's on. Huh. Well, did it help him?
Apparently didn't work too well.
Man, the Russians are in there going, it's so weird. We've been at war for 4 years, and I've been a radar operator that whole time, and I haven't seen a damn thing on this radar for 4 years. Like, it's like, maybe the radar isn't working well.
They haven't seen nothing. Oh, look at them. They're running. They're running. Look at that little thing chasing it.
Oh, look, it's a little buhaka with a machine gun on it. It's a tentacle.
How come I can't hear nothing?
Oh, because the audio is muted. That's what it would sound like if the audio was unmuted. Hello? Hello? Is it me you're looking for? I think Matthew's Discord just disconnected. Give me a second, folks. I'm going to fix this. We can fix it. We can, folks. It's only a matter of time and a matter of effort.
You hear me now?
I can hear you. What did you do?
I didn't do nothing, man. Your Discord call dropped.
It's not always my... Did you restart your Discord?
I just ended the call and started it again. It's fixed now.
Oh, your computer dropped it. But anyways, we can see the Pantsir here on the move. And now we can see it about to get hit. And now we can see them coming in for the fresh kill. And here we go. Ooh! Right on the turret. That's something else right there. You know, folks, I was about to go through the whole task manager thing and restart the Discord and everything, and then he hopped right back on the call. That was a great thing. A wonderful thing, really. And we see them here getting ready for what might possibly be a double tap. And that's the end of the clip. And then we see some women here at the end putting up heart signs. Don't know what that was about, but whatever. Moving on from that, it's time for us to get on down into our location unknowns. Obriaga. We were able to see a little Ukrainian F-16 today. Look at the little fella. Look at it. It's looking wonderful right there. We got 8 small diameter bombs, 2 AIM-9s, probably of the AIM-9L variety, and then some earlier AIM-120s. Probably the AIM-120A or the AIM-120C. Pretty cool. I like to see them, you know? The F-16s are good-looking aircraft. And with those little blue and yellow roundels on them, they just look that much better. It's great to see that the F-16s from the Netherlands were able to get a second wind in Ukraine. But moving on from that and out of that little bit of news, we also got the Russian casualty report, which was generously republished by Miss Disa, keeper of the records. And over the course of the day, we've been able to see the following. Russian losses to March 14, 2026, day 1,480, 2,147 drones is the 5th highest daily loss, and the 7-day average is about 2,200 a day. High equipment losses continue, and over the course of the past 24 hours, we were able to see 810 Russian soldiers wounded and killed, along with 4 tanks, 10 APCs, 52 supply trucks, 1 MLRS, 1 air defense system, 2,147 drones, and 180 supply trucks. A pretty decent day, all things considered. And once we get to the front lines, you can kind of see why. Moving us on up into the only frontline clip that we got out of Ukraine today, unfortunately, we were able to see the 22nd Mechanized Brigade taking a couple of pot shots at the Russians. Here's a Russian technical, about to get what's theirs. Here's a Russian Buhanka. Actually, that was a Sprinter van. We can also see a lot of Neva here getting what's theirs. This crappy car getting blown up. Oh, right on the hood. Ooh, I mean, holy moly, they're really slamming them here. But that's the end of that clip. Moving us on into the area of the Luhansk Oblast, we also were able to see that within this area as well, it appears that Russian missile storages were hit, and the explosions were quite tremendous.
Oh, wow, look at that little fireworks coming out of this one.
Man, really something right there. We also were able to see a missile storage on fire here as well. This is a little bit of a longer clip of what we just saw.
And what city is this one in?
This was near the Luhansk city area.
Damn, oh, look at that. It's the same thing.
But longer. We get to get a longer view of it. Oh, it's like a little fireworks show out there.
Oh, a
Oh,
little runaway.
I believe I can fly. It's like, yes, you can. You can fly, little fella. Go get him. They're cooking them.
That's really something the way that facility blew up.
Man, it really is something. It's something else. It's just something to watch. Something to see in the middle of the night, you know. But moving on from that, folks, that's actually the end of our news for the day. As a matter of fact, that's actually everything that we had that happened around the world. And tonight, folks, we were actually able to get this done in a more manageable time. Instead of it taking about 2 hours and 20 minutes to cover the news, it took only 2 hours. Wow, that is great time savings. We generally were, back in the day, running about an hour and 30 minutes of news. Recently, it got up to almost 2.5 hours, and now we've gotten it down tonight to about 2 hours again, which is a little bit more manageable. But with that in mind, folks, I've got to thank all of y'all so much for watching the news so far. Over 2 hours of news, 200,000 people have watched this channel. We are wildly honored and greatly appreciative of so many of y'all spending your time here and enjoying our news. We hope that y'all have enjoyed it once again tonight. And I do have to say that many people, folks, and I mean quite a many of people, have been enjoying the news lately here on this channel. It's been a real honor and a pleasure to see that, because Matthew and me pride ourselves greatly on being able to cover all of that news. As a matter of fact, in the United States of America just yesterday, we were number 11 in the country for live stream viewership, which I gotta say, folks, is really something else. I cannot really emphasize enough how big that is to us, and I kind of don't like. I kind of not wanting to sound overly excited about it, because it's actually just unbelievable to see that we're that high up in the ratings. But I also have to say that we're entirely honored to know that so many people consider this channel to be high enough quality news that people are coming back each and every day in some of the largest numbers on YouTube in the United States to watch this show, and we're massively thankful for all of y'all, everyone who's in the chat, everyone who's not chatting, people who are just spending their time. We're greatly appreciative to each and every single one of y'all. But with that in mind, we want to get a talk to as many of y'all as we can. We can't talk to all of y'all, because talking to even 24,000 people, which is the number of folks who are here right now, would probably be beyond our logistical capabilities. But there are people who have thrown in super chats, and there are some live chats that we've been able to gather throughout the stream. And we want to be able to try and answer as many of them all as we can. And so, with that in mind, everyone, Matthew, what do we got? What do we got here?
Oh. All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night, it's time to get our super chats, our live chat questions, and also our Morse code decoders of the stream. But first of all, though, we do have a slight bit of breaking news to cover in the meantime. So we are hearing that apparently there has been a confirmed missile impact reported in Tel Aviv, Israel. That's something we're hearing about right now. We're also seeing as well that a rocket and drone attack is taking place in the UAE once again, and apparently it's still ongoing as we speak. And we've also heard early reports of multiple explosions near U.S. military infrastructure in Manama, Bahrain. So it looks like there's still an ongoing Iranian attack on these areas. And once again, missiles being fired at Israel. So that does prove that Iran's missile capabilities have not been taken out completely, or otherwise they would not have the ability to do that. So that is quite disturbing to see. But we're not really hearing of too many like pieces of damage out of this attack so far. But we are seeing in Bahrain there could be some possible hits that we're seeing right now, apparently near Manama, Bahrain, near U.S. military infrastructure. So, Enforcer, what say you?
That's fairly interesting to hear. It seems another attack is ongoing by the Iranians, and we'll probably have a little bit more information on that here within the next day or so. But I also have to let y'all know this, folks. Speaking of the next day, tomorrow is going to be a really interesting day, because we will not be running a late night show like we normally do. It's actually going to be a midday show, and it's not going to be a breaking news show or anything. It's just going to be a normal news show, and it's going to be covering about the past 12 hours of news, so it's not going to be wildly long. For that reason, it's probably going to be like maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half of news, something around there, because just to kind of explain a little bit, but not a lot, because we have a little bit of operational security going on with this, we have to go to tend to some business. It's not a vacation action or anything like that. It's actually something that is fairly mundane, but it requires us to actually deal with some stuff to where we can't be on the show on air. And so for that reason, we don't want to go completely without running a show. So we're going to be running a live show in the middle of the day tomorrow. I can't really guarantee y'all exactly when, but we're kind of eyeballing like the 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time sort of a time slot, or a little bit later than that. And then we'll run a normal show in the middle of the day then. And we're also going to try and ensure that it is a Sunday fundraiser, even with it being in the middle of the day. So that show will run in the middle of the day tomorrow, because sadly we have something that we have to tend to that's kind of conflicting with a normal stream schedule. And while we never like to change the schedules of streams or cancel streams outright, we kind of have to on this one because it's a necessary thing that we have to tend to. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that in mind, it is time for us to get on into the questions themselves. Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so jumping back into our super chat questions here, our first one of the last segment is going to go to none other than Johnny Hargiri. And thank you very much, Johnny, for that $200 support.
Hey!
And we appreciate that very, very much. Another massive support, by the way. Very generous of you, Johnny. We appreciate it. He said, clear Hormuz, win the war. Love the criticism of all things.
And I got to thank you so much for the incredible support, John. And I got to say that we're greatly appreciative of folks like you enjoying the channel and also appreciating what we say, because we always try and say things in the best interest of the United States of America. And that doesn't mean that everything always has to be positive. You know, if things aren't going well, they just aren't going well. And that is what it is. And I got to thank you so much for the incredibly massive support and also respecting that about our channel. Some people don't. And tonight has been really something special. It's been truly profound, folks. I wish y'all could see the folks that we've been banning out of the chat, like the bots, because we have literally been called everything under the sun tonight. Far right-wing MAGA extremists, TDS liberal snowflakes. We've literally been called everything tonight by every bot. I mean, it was ironic because those two completely opposite statements and attacks on our character and stuff would literally be made like literally 2 chats apart from each other. So one of them would come in and then the other one would come in after 2 people had said something else. It's been crazy tonight, but we've been trying to get rid of those bots as much as we can. And generally, they're not going to impede us from covering our news. Our news is the news. You know, it's like if people don't like it, you know, it's like unfortunate for them. It's like that's the news. So if they don't like it, sorry. You know, it's like there's not a lot we can do. And if they're bots, you know, it's like who the hell cares what they have to say because they're not even real. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling to this day. So big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 50 from Wubba Real, and thank you very much, Wubba, for that $50 support as well. And he said, thanks for the long hours the last few weeks, and Slayer is forever. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure if it's long hours, but tonight I am feeling under the weather for some reason. I don't know what it is. Like, I'm feeling like all my energy has been zapped tonight. Hopefully I hadn't come across in the stream too much, but I've been over here thinking, dang, what is going on? Like, I feel like my energy's gone. Like, the caffeine did nothing for me tonight. Like, I am just like, I don't even know what's going on. The long hours haven't been getting to me so far for the past few weeks. We've been doing this like nonstop like this. I don't know if maybe it's finally catching up, but tonight I am feeling it. I am feeling it, but we are still delivering. We got to get this news out there. But thank you very much, Wubba, for that support as well. And Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, thank you for the support. And I also got to say, man, I don't know what it is, but I kind of been feeling like that lately too. I got to tell y'all, folks, like getting through the days these days has been really like tough for me outside of the show, because the first 2 weeks of coverage that we did, and I don't really say this a lot because to be entirely honest with y'all, running the stream is not stressful. Like a lot of people would get stage fright and stuff, and a lot of people say that to me. They're like, damn, you know, even talking in front of 30 or 40,000 people every night on air for like 3 hours, you know, and basically people are hanging on your every word, that would be very stressful. And generally over the years, I've gotten used to that. I mean, this isn't our first rodeo with running large streams. You know, we've done this many times. But the thing that is mentally taxing and stressful is to try and make everything make sense for 3.5 hours, and nowadays like 4.5 to 5 hours straight. It's very mentally exhausting to do that, because a lot of people may not know this, but I actually don't have a script, and neither does Matthew, every time that we come on air. And generally, considering that I'm the one who's actually covering all of the news for the past 24 hours, it's basically my sole job to come up with the entire monologue of what I say every night in my head in about an hour before the show, and then belt all of that out and all the information and all the analysis and stuff nonstop for 3.5, 4.5 hours without a break, without a script, which is very mentally exhausting. And honestly, it kind of gets to the point of physical exhaustion because it just gets that exhausting to try and like think about how to keep everything laser like focused like that and get everything out. And so I've been waking up some days, folks, lately, and I've just been absolutely beat to the point that it's hard to even get up out of bed until it's like about time to run a show, because it is exhausting. Like it is actually like legitimately exhausting, especially when things are breaking. And I also got to say, folks, like this is one thing I have to say is like very mentally exhausting for me is whenever a breaking news segment happens, because they're not bad. It's always good to get the breaking news. But the thing is I basically have to be able to react instantaneously to whatever just came out, and also keep multiple hours of monologue still on track in my head, and basically hit the pause button, listen to what happened, respond and react to that, and then analyze it and conversate about it even, and then get right back to what we were talking about.
Oh, breaking. No, I'm just joking.
I was like, the timing of that is comedic. So I'm probably like, bro, there's no way. But still, I gotta say, like, a huge thanks to everyone for watching. I mean, we put a lot into this, a lot of work into this. While it is exhausting, and I'm talking about how exhausting it is, the reason why I go through, especially like the mental and physical exhaustion of trying to do this every day, is because I just am highly, like, y'all do not know how enthralled I am to be able to do this. I talk this type of stuff my entire life, and have read about it, obsessed about it, researched it, learned about it, and nowadays there's an entire audience of people, speaking for myself personally, there's an entire audience of people who listen to this every single night, and y'all do not know how much that means to me. It's a great, amazing thing to see, and I cannot thank y'all all enough for being here and listening to it. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and enjoying the way we cover it. Just straight facts, no BS, calling the shots how they are, whether they're good or bad. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a $50 support once again from Chris Feilbach, and thank you very much, Chris, for that second support of the night, and we do appreciate that very, very much. He said also, regarding orbifolds from last night, an LSA mathematician has found if the enforcers are amenable, we do have a chef after all. Her name appears to be Kristen J, and she has a BS in pure math and an MS in actuarial science.
And I gotta thank you so much for supporting. That's really interesting to hear, I gotta say. And also, let's see. We that's very interesting to hear. We'll have to see about that. And you know something I gotta say though, like a little bit of an aside. I hate how it's like a BS. Because I think that I have a bachelor in. I think I have a bachelor in arts. I think that's what history is that it's the, like, it's in the arts and not the sciences. I'm not really sure. But I think, Matthew, yours is a BS thing. And it, like, you know, y'all all know.
No,
like,
it's not.
Is it?
It's real. It's not BS. It's real. It's
Well,
BA.
Oh, yours is a Bachelor of Arts, too?
Yeah, it's a Bachelor of Art in Math.
Let me go pull this up. Is history a BS degree? Let's see here. Yes, it's bullshit.
Some say it's a BS degree. It's hard to get a degree. It's hard to get a job with it.
So, so let's see. So I'd have to go back and look at my degree, folks, because I'll be honest with y'all, I got my degree and I stopped giving a damn about it. So I don't know if it's a BS or a BA, but apparently it could be both. I think mine's a Bachelor of Arts in History, though. I think that's what it is. But still, I mean, honestly, I'll kind of be straight up with y'all. I mean, a history degree is kind of bullshit. I mean, like, I'm just gonna be kind of a little upfront. I mean, like, yes, it's like a real study and an academic principle and everything, but you really can't get like a job where you actually use what you learned getting a history degree. You know, like, this is a very rare exception, this show right here, being able to actually apply anything that I learned in college into an actual job. I mean, most people would never be able to do that with a history degree. So, I mean, if this BS isn't a Bachelor of Science or bullshit, I mean, you know, it kind of is the same thing either way, I guess. But, like, I hate that, though, because I wish that people could really get good paying jobs with a history degree, because I think it's important for people to know history and learn about it in an actual academic setting instead of what people make it into these days. But it's just hard to find a job with that. It's really hard to find a job at all these days, much less in history. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running, Chris. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Arar983, and thank you, Ron Gerard, as well for that $20 support. And they said, a happy Saturday, don't you know, LSA.
And thank you so much for the support. And I gotta say, it is a happy Saturday. We're finally hearing they're going to deal with the Strait of Hormuz. Hey! And I gotta say a big thanks to you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on and into the next one.
We also have a couple of super chats from GunFox61, and thank you very much, GunFox, for the three $20 supports. And starting off with the first one, he said the War of the Golden Stool, also known as the Ya Asentawa War, and the Third Ashanti Expedition, the Ashanti Uprising, or variations thereof, was a campaign in the 1900s during a series of conflicts. Question from the chat.
Huh, that's very interesting. And it also appears that this is the stool in question. This is kind of like the War of the Bucket, you know, like from Italy. Matthew, have you ever heard of the War of the Bucket?
I personally haven't heard of it.
Ah, yes. It's where these two towns went to war over the municipal bucket. Because back in the day, there were wells, you know, like the traditional wells where you lower the bucket and you grab the water from the bottom. And every city had a municipal well. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was Bologna and Modena that went to war over the bucket because a villager or a citizen of the city of Modena, I think, stole the bucket from Bologna, or Bologna, if you want to call it that, and then they brought it back to Modena, and then they basically went to war to get the bucket back, and then they brought it back to Bologna, and then they got it stolen again, and it was a whole thing. Like, it was a humongous deal about this bucket that could easily be replaced, but it was really more so a matter of principle at that point that no one was stealing their bucket. So beyond that, I mean, that's kind of like the same thing, I suppose. I don't know the significance of the golden stool. Maybe it was just on principle, but that is a very interesting thing to hear, and I thank you for the support and sharing that little bit of history with us right there. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Let's have another one from GunFox, who said the Somaliland campaign, also called the Anglo-Somali War or the Dervish Rebellion, was a rebellion in the Horn of Africa by the Dervish, a Somali movement led by Sayyid Muhammad Abdullah Hassan, which continued independently.
And you know, let me go see about this. Oh, yes. This was right before. Yes, I believe this was right before the, oh heavens. Yes, it was in the First World War. It's one of those smaller side theaters. Yes, I do remember this now. It's kind of a small note in the First World War, but this, I believe, was also kind of attached to the larger British campaigns that were going on against German Africa, which is now modern-day Tanzania. It was kind of all within sort of the same framework, to a sense, although Somalia wasn't controlled by the Germans. But a very interesting thing nonetheless. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and sharing that little tidbit of history with us as well. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have another super chat from GunFox once again, and GunFox said the Ottoman Empire attempted to invade Italy in 1480. The Ottoman invasion of Otranto occurred between 1480 and 1481 at the Italian city of Otranto in Apulia, Italy, in 1911 to 1912. Italy and the Ottoman Empire fought a war.
You know, that's actually an interesting fact, you see. That's an interesting one right there, because it actually is something that's very little known in modern-day understanding, that the Ottomans, which basically represented the seat of the Islamic faith throughout most of history until 1918, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed, were actually conducting wars of expansion into Europe. And, you know, generally it's always looked at as a one-side thing. Like, I really find the whole historical thing that people talk about these days between the jihads and the crusades to be very, like, two-dimensional, because a lot of people don't look at it in, like, a nuanced way. Like, everyone be like, oh, the Christians conducted the crusades, and oh, well, the Muslims conducted the jihads. It's like, yeah, they were all happening simultaneously for hundreds of years. I mean, it was like, you know, a lot like how theology drives Iran to do the stupid stuff it does today. Theology was a huge driving factor for everybody back then. And so a lot of people don't know this, but the Ottomans were always conducting wars of expansion further on into the Balkans, and that's also why there's a significant amount of Islamic populations in places like, say, Kosovo and Albania and so on, is because of the Ottoman expansion into those areas. And what's interesting about that, like, just to kind of point this out, is that places like Greece and Albania and Serbia are actually some of the first places where Christendom actually spread historically, because it was kind of closer to the epicenter of where, I guess you say, modern-day Christianity started, out as an offsplit of Judaism in a sense. But once the Ottomans started their more so conquest into the Balkans, a lot of those areas started to be converted into Islam, because under the Ottoman laws, while they did tolerate different religions, there was still some forms of civil penalties for being of different religious faiths, except for Islam. So a lot of people would convert to Islam so that way they didn't have those civil penalties like increased taxes and such levied against them. And so it's an interesting fact that that did happen. And another thing that y'all may or may not know is that in the 1600s, the Ottomans actually besieged the city of Vienna in Austria. And once the siege failed, because of the arrival of the Polish hussars, or the winged hussars from Poland, and generally that rout of the Ottomans that had been besieging the city for some time, by urban legend within Vienna, the Ottomans actually left behind coffee beans outside of the city, which the Viennese didn't actually know what to do with, and generally coffee hadn't been introduced into Europe at all at that point, even by the Americas. And so they finally found out that you could crush them up into a grind and then brew them into something kind of similar to tea, and that's how coffee culture first started to take off in was not a part of Ottoman Europe in the Balkans, and was in the rest of Europe around the rest of the area. And so Viennese coffee houses are actually a huge part of Vienna's cultural and historic background, and they're actually UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Now, a pretty interesting little side fact about that. But a huge thanks to you for the support and sharing that interesting bit of history with us, because I have to say that the entire time period during then, very interesting time, the religious wars between the Christians and the Islamic groups, or more so the Ottomans in particular, because it was really, honestly, folks, there wasn't, like, when you look at it, like, honestly, both sides were pretty evenly matched back then for the larger per se. And then not only that, they also were all pursuing technological innovations to try and outdo each other. So generally you would see that both sides were almost like mirrors of each other, but had different cultural customs and such. Very interesting historical period if you look into it. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. And a big thanks to you once again, by the way.
Indeed. Also, by the way, I did not forget this time, Gun Fox, and thank you very much for also pointing this out. Someone in the chat as well that pointed this out. We need to get a question from the live chat in honor of Gun Fox, and this one goes to Weasel, who said, "I just saw a couple of news articles about the Abe Lincoln getting hit. Is that fake news?"
Fake news. Like, none of the carriers are getting hit. A lot of stories have been going around that are just fake, like Netanyahu's dead. Netanyahu is not dead. His brother died, but he's not dead. And so everyone's like, Netanyahu's dead. It's like, no, it's his brother. He got blown up in their house. It's like, so that's a totally different Netanyahu. That's not Benjamin Netanyahu. And then the Abe Lincoln hasn't been hit either. Those are just straight BS stories. Because there are a lot of people out, like, here's the funny thing. Kind of like how one certain group in America hates Ukraine and loves Russia because that war started under a certain political party in America. Basically, the same things happened in reverse now because of the war with Iran, because the war with Iran started under a different political party. So naturally, a decent amount of people from the opposite political party are going to completely hate the war and basically root against the United States and its interests. So they're all coming up with just straight bullshit stories at this point to try and make it sound like the Iranians are doing well. Like, one of the big ones that started off was that the U.S. was blowing up aircraft that were painted onto the ground, which is not true. Like, I think it happened like once, but they were making it sound like literally Iran was taking no losses, at least for their air forces and helicopter forces, and the U.S. was literally just bombing nothing but paintings on the ground. It's like, that happened once. Things like that are going to happen from time to time, but it's not happening literally across their whole country. And then they come up with these outlandish stories like Netanyahu's dead and the carrier's been sunk. And I just find it so crazy, folks, because it's so interesting to me how political convictions these days basically get people to root against their own country and hope for its destruction. Because it's like, if those people were right, it's like the outcome of that desire to see that happen would be that at least at a minimum several hundred U.S. service members would be dead, and those are their fellow countrymen, might even be their family members. It's like, it's so crazy to me how people put their political affiliations over the best interest and safety of their own citizenry, because it's like, whether or not you agree with this war, isn't that kind of barbaric to wish that your fellow countrymen in the armed forces would die in this war just because you don't like it? I mean, those are our people, it's like, I know some of them personally. It's like, I'd hate to think that any of them, like the ones that have died so far would die in the war. It's an unfortunate reality of war, but it's not one to sit there because you don't like the war and start cheering on the death of plenty of Americans. That would be a ridiculous sort of a notion. But also, I see some people saying, those people are saying, yeah, but I also got to say, though, on the flip side, though, on the opposite end, there's a lot of people who basically root against the United States and root for Russia on the other side. I find both of those groups to be highly un-American and basically borderlining treason, to be entirely honest. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next super chat is going to go to Charles Samaha. And thank you very much, Charles, for that $20 support. And he said, thank you.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Miami Catfish, and thank you very much, Miami Catfish, for that $20 support as well. They said Iran can retaliate for a cargo disruption, so that would be a mistake until that threat is gone. And best for Marines to eliminate coastal anti-ship weapons, but the Strait isn't the only problem, and the GCC has already cut operations too.
And I would generally agree, it's not the only problem, but the Strait of Hormuz is our primary problem. If we're looking at this as like a trauma room, the Strait of Hormuz is hemorrhaging and requires immediate attention. There are other issues, I definitely agree with you, but I'd still say that I would stick to my conviction that the Strait of Hormuz is our top priority at the moment, because it's really the way that the Iranians can hurt us the most, and it's really the only way that they can try to hurt us, meaning that with each passing day that it's still under their control and blockaded, it's another day that they're able to get a little actually a pretty big victory on us every single day that the Strait remains closed. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to none other than Yas Mavanda, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much as well. They said, God bless America.
And God bless America indeed. Or as I like to say, long live the Republic, because I hope that our Republic does have a truly long and storied life. It's already had 250 years behind it, and hopefully we'll be able to see another 250 put behind the United States. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from After Action with Tony, and thank you very much, Tony, as well, for that $20 support. He said, from the first night of the Ukraine invasion, when you were like, oh, the algorithm, to the guest speaker who was disappointing, remember him, and you two have been a part of my routine for 4 years now, and thanks for the great work, gents.
And thank you so much for the kind words, and you've been around an incredibly long time. And I gotta say, that was a really bad start to bringing guests on air, and generally that's why we kind of cut out that practice not that long after. Not to say that some of our guests weren't great folks, you know, like some of them actually were pretty great folks, but we actually sadly had more bad run-ins. I think it was just by mere statistical chance that happened than anything. When we were bringing guests on, and so we haven't really done that since for like the past 3.5 years or so. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and thank you for having been around for so long. So huge thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Sadata Hosoda. And thank you very much, Sadata, for that $20 support. He did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate that very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but we're still massively appreciative because your support helps us to keep this channel running day in and day out. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have another super chat from Chris Feilbach. He puts in a 20 this time, and a huge shout to you, Chris, for the third super chat of the night. He said, rumor has it that Putin can no longer find his favorite, wait a second. I don't know about this one. I don't know about this one right here. This one's crazy right here, Chris. This one's crazy, I must admit. Sadly, I can't read it. It's an interesting joke, though. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support, and with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $100 support from Kikash13. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. Very generous, and we do appreciate that as well. They said, I got 27 years as a firefighter, and I own my business. I can go visit my store there. Let's see here. Hold on. It just jumped away from me for a second. I said, go visit my store and oddities. And how else can I comment on the other things? I don't know. Thank you. I've been listening to you since episode 80, and I've had 2 back surgeries since then. And thanks for everything.
And thank you for the incredible support, Kikash. And thank you so much for enjoying the channel. And you've been around for an incredibly long time. And I got to say, that's a great thing to hear that you own your own business. And hopefully it's going quite well. And I got to thank you so much once again for that unbelievable and massive support. Because folks like you help this channel to keep on running and make this thing possible. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that I've addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a super chat from Fam, and Fam put in a 14 and said, how will the troops be able to defend against any ballistics launched at them on the island, and they already struggle to defend the region?
Generally, that's kind of the problem, is that they really wouldn't be able to, because their response window would be incredibly small. And considering that they're not really mobile or able to even move around at that point, because the island is such a small area, it's basically putting a bunch of guys to get shot in a barrel, putting them on that island. So the answer to that is that they really can't do anything about it, and that's why I'm saying that putting a whole bunch of forces on the Karg Island and then just keeping them there wouldn't really be that great of an idea, to be entirely honest. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And big thanks to you for the support and helping the channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a super chat that goes to, let me scroll up to it. This one goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 10. He said, good evening, enforcers and LSA, and maybe a bit for the coffee fund.
And maybe a bit for the coffee fund, maybe a bit, maybe a tad, maybe a drop of coffee, maybe a smidging of coffee, perhaps. Maybe that'd be a good idea. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from William. And thank you, William, as well for that 10. He said, you forget the main objective is to secure the nuclear material. Deltas, SEALs, and Rangers need the Marines to secure an area so the NEST team can recover the nasty crap and bring it home.
Now, that's true. That's true. But here's the thing about that, though. They currently have those facilities that are holding the enriched uranium basically buried. There's really no way to get into the Mezi unless we excavate the entrance, which would take a lot of time. And also, there's no way for us to just bomb them, because we already tried that before, and that didn't really seem to work out too well. So what our plan was here, and we had already covered this before the war, and this actually ended up being exactly what they tried to do, was to just topple the Iranian regime, because we could eliminate the government that is involved in constantly trying to develop a nuclear weapon, then the nuclear weapons development would inherently cease, because the government that was sponsoring it and supporting it would no longer exist to continue the work. And that's why generally it moved on to trying to topple the Iranian regime, which was a pretty sound idea, because that might have been easier in practice than actually going in and trying to physically take the nuclear material out of those facilities. That would be pretty hard to get. Now that war plan has changed, and I definitely agree with you, it needs to be kept in mind that that was our original war goal, because now the president's saying, basically, along with everyone else in the government, that it's all about just cutting the Iranian military down to size. And it's like, that's a really stupid way to change the war goal, just being upfront, because it's like, the whole idea was that we were either going to get rid of the nuclear facilities by directly destroying them, which didn't work. So then step 2 was going to be remove the Iranian government that wants to make nuclear weapons. They won't be made after the Iranian government, the Islamic regime, is gone. And now we've completely abandoned that as well, and now we've moved on to a very watered down sort of a deal that will ensure that the Islamic regime is still around and still could try and make a nuclear weapon. And apparently, if you point that out, you might get a little bit of attention from some guy in the FCC. But beyond that, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And I generally have to say, I definitely agree with you. We should be keeping attention on that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a super chat from C&D Wedding, who put in a 10 and said, if the U.S. reopens the strait, what's to stop the U.S. at some point in the future from controlling the oil output and not allowing the sale to nations that didn't join the effort or charge fees?
Generally, that would be stopped, because that would not be in the interest of those oil companies, and that wouldn't really be in the interest of any actual economic enterprise, and that would start to artificially jack up the price of oil as well, because we would be artificially conflating the supply like Iran is trying to do right now. So that really wouldn't work out too well, and also that wouldn't be in America's economic interests, to be entirely honest. Not to say that that's out of the question. I mean, they might try and do something, stupid like that. You can never really put anything out of the question these days. I mean, I was just kind of alluding to this a moment ago, but apparently the chair of the FCC on Twitter today directly threatened mainstream news companies that if they don't report the news the way the U.S. government wants them to report the news, they're just going to not renew their licenses when it comes around to renewing their broadcasting licenses. So, dumb stuff can happen, and that's not out of the question, but generally I'd say that probably wouldn't be in our economic interest and in money-making interest, and that wouldn't make the shareholders of those companies happy, and then you can see that starts to be a serious concern even of the current U.S. government. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
Also have a 10 from Smelly Fella, who said, can you imagine if FB/social media was around in 2003 and talking crap like Tehran Tim is now? Goodness.
Goodness, like goodness indeed, honestly. And a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to say that it's a massive and wonderful thing to know that folks like you help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're about to move on to the next one. But I saw someone say something about fake news sucks. You know, I don't really like fake news either. I'd agree with you. But the thing is that in America, you have a right to be able to say whatever you want. Even a news company has the right to say what they want. Because I can tell you this, like just to say this fairly, sure, CNN says a lot of stuff that is not really the greatest sounding, but Fox News does that as well, but in another direction. Now, let's say here in a little bit, a certain political party loses the midterms, and then the other political party moves forward to impeachment. So does that mean that that political party now has the ability to start stripping, certain other leaning news companies of their broadcasting licenses because they're saying that they're not really reporting the news and they're being overly negative on the government, which is wrong? And that the answer to that's no. The First Amendment allows you, even as a news company or whoever you are, to be as critical of the government as you want to be. I mean, like it allows you to basically say whatever you want, no matter what. And the fact that generally the sort of fair broadcasting principles have been completely thrown out of the window because there's not a single mainstream news company out there that is down the middle. They either lean hard left or hard right. I mean, that would be an incredibly bad precedent to lay out because you're just basically begging at that point for the axe to come swinging the opposite direction at you once the other party gets in charge, if that's what you start doing. It's a terrible idea. At that point, you've basically partisanized everything. The military's got to be political now. The news has got to be political. And it's all got to be in line with whoever's in charge at that moment. Basically, at that point, you're almost creating a default dictatorship because if anyone steps out of line of whoever's in charge, it's basically like a dictator. You're heavily punished for not just straight up agreeing with anything and everything that they're doing, which isn't a good sort of a thing to see. Like we try and keep things as neutral on this channel as possible, but if people don't want to do that, they have a right to not do that. Like we do it because I respect being down the middle and just calling things for what it is, whether it's good or bad, no matter who's in charge. But some people like to be political. That's not a thing we'll ever do on this channel, and that's not the place on this channel to be political because that's not how we do it. But other people have a right to do that, and I think a lot of people kind of miss out on that these days because I can tell you that Fox and CNN, in my opinion, peddling fake news a great deal because they basically just live in la-la land, and whatever their political party they like is doing, it's the best thing on the planet, and the other one's demons, basically, that are living on Earth. That's not real news. But they both have a right to do it. Like, they both have a right to do it. There's nothing you can really do to stop them. Like, the only thing that you can do to stop them is just go watch channels like ours that are neutral, and then by their decreasing ratings, they'll have to either change or go out of business. That's really the one way you can change it. But having the government go and start revoking licenses because they don't like what a news company is saying about them, that's getting on into violations of the First Amendment, really. But with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Scott, who puts in a 10, and he said, "Thank you."
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Rotormax, who said, "I've been watching you guys since a couple of weeks after the war started, and you're one of the best."
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep running. Thank you for the kind words as well. I got to say that's a massive and incredible thing to know that folks like you enjoy the channel and help it to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Trevinator, who said, "Can the U.S. not use destroyers, jets, Apaches, and the A-10 Warthog to escort? And destroyers and jets can take missiles and drones, and Apaches and A-10 can deal with the air and sea drones. And thanks for the great work."
Generally, that is possible and doable, and that might be what they're bringing in that LHA group for. So a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I see a lot of people in the chat, no, you're wrong, like you're defending Marxist property. Like, in this country, you can say whatever you want. I think a lot of people might be a little bit confused about that, but free speech is free speech. Like, of course, you can't go around threatening people and slandering their reputation for the hell of it, trying to destroy them. As far as the reputation goes to the public, that would be defamation. But you can say whatever you want. Like, you can take an absolutely extreme and irreprehensible sort of a political view in this country on either the right or the left. And by the law of this country, you're allowed to do that. A newspaper is able to run as a commie rag or even one that goes in a whole other leaning, and they're able to do that technically because in the country, you have a First Amendment protection of free speech. I think a lot of people don't really understand that, and I got to say that that's really a failing of a lot of Americans these days, to not understand that just because you don't like what someone's saying, no matter how stupid it is, doesn't mean that we have a legal ability to shut them down and then take actions against them to punish them for what they're saying. I think many people miss that these days on both sides. But that's also how we're able to do what we're doing here. If you enjoy and respect our channel, that's because we have the First Amendment of free speech to not take a political side. What y'all are advocating for is basically at some point going to force us to either have to completely agree with what someone on the right is saying or to completely agree with what someone on the left is saying, which then completely destroys the premise of our news coverage, where it's pro-American and pro-Western, but politically neutral. And I think a lot of people are kind of missing the forest for the trees on that one. And I gotta say, like, I'm not going to hold any bars on this one. If you believe that the U.S. government has a right to suppress free speech, you're not really even an American. You don't even understand what American values are. I mean, immigrants probably that are hardly even naturalized in this country probably have a better understanding of what American rights are than you do, and they're not even born here and from here. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Zunit, who said, interesting note in history. Winston Churchill had many critics within the government, specifically his erratic decision-making, harsh treatment of staff, and unrealistic military goals.
Winston Churchill?
Yes, that's what they say.
Oh, well, I mean, that was kind of, though, a little bit manufactured, because that was manufactured by the Labor Party to get him ousted in favor of Clement Attlee. I mean, like, kind of, sort of, but not quite. I mean, the guy was an alcoholic and, like, you know, was kind of hardly functional sometimes, so I don't think you could have been too critical on his staff, but I'd have to look into that a little bit more. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Eastside Barbell for putting in a $10 support, and we appreciate you very much, Eastside, for that 10. We also have a 10 from Ian Mitson. He said, new biker here, and how likely is it to drop the damn thing? And according to YouTubers, there's no way not to drop it, at least in the beginning. Now, like, presumably, hopefully you don't drop it. Like, that's the goal, not to drop it. But I will say, when I was learning how to ride a motorcycle the first time, I actually did flip the thing sideways. Like, when here's a very beginner mistake, by the way. You have to be careful about this when you first start riding. If you're going up an incline of any sort and you're really not super familiar with how to ride the motorcycle yet, never try to make a turn on an incline, ever. Like, that is a massive mistake to try to do that, because you'll quickly realize, my legs don't have the strength to hold this thing up on a slight incline, because it shifts the weight, obviously, to one side or the other. So you're naturally going to flip over or fall over. So for me, I fell over, busted my ass, and also fell back. And then thankfully I had my helmet, all the gear on and stuff like that. So it was just simply a knocking the wind out of me situation. No damage to the bike or anything like that, but it was a wake-up call. Like, okay, like, do not try to make a turn on any type of incline, not even a small one, or you could be in some deep trouble right there. Now, I was actually so embarrassed by that, I picked up the 500-pound motorcycle with ease. And I'm not a huge dude. Like, I'm about 180 pounds or so. I'm not weak, but at the same time, I'm not a bodybuilder either. I picked up that 500-pound bike like it weighed nothing. I was like, I am not being caught. Literally flipped off the side of his bike like this. I just picked the thing up and just went on my business. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I haven't ever really ridden motorcycles. There's one that really interests me, and Matthew knows which one it is because I always bring it up. I just wish they'd make it a little bit larger than what it is. But it's these Halcyon 450s that look like the vintage bikes of, like, old, of, like, the 1920s and the 30s and such. They look really cool to me, but I've never dropped a motorcycle because I've never drove one, sadly. I would like to one day. But honestly, I would just like to have a motorcycle like that. I honestly just think that is the cat's meow. It looks super cool. But I would like it to be a little bit more powerful than a 450cc, like, I kind of like to see it like a 750, well, not really 7, something around there. It's something a little bit larger and more sizable, because these things are more like little, like, town scooters. And Matthew's always told me that you need to have more power than a 450, and I kind of believe him on that one. I think he's absolutely right. You do need more power on one of these. So I would love to see if they made one of these in a bigger size, and then I'd really seriously consider getting a motorcycle. But I wanted to be this one just in a larger engine size because none of the other ones really interest me. Because I'm always one who has to be a little bit too unique, probably eccentric is what they would call it. Because like the modern motorcycles look cool, but I can never find one that's really like neat looking to me. And I like vintage looking stuff. And this thing hits all of the bells and whistles with vintage looking and being modern at that, where you can actually get it repaired and service and actually use it without it being afraid of it breaking down and then there's no way to fix it. But these things are a little pricey because they're all handmade, like legitimately the whole thing's handmade. So they're, I believe, 13.5 starting price, which is like a Ducati basically. So there's those things going for it. But I've never dropped a motorcycle because I've never driven one. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from BH from New Hampshire, who put in a 10 and said, New Hampshire here, great channel, and live free or die.
And thank you so much for the support. And I definitely agree. Live free or die. And an old classic political cartoon, I believe by Benjamin Franklin, actually, before the revolution kicked off. And I've seen even more people in here like, oh, well, like, I find it so interesting, folks, these days, how people just basically argue away their rights. Like, free speech and stuff. And I don't mean to beat it down, like just beat the dead horse at this point, but I just find that so interesting because it's like, all these people lived in a country. It's an exemplar of liberties across the world. Most other countries only have the liberties they have these days because they adopted an American government system or a model, either through occupation or just by exposure to the U.S. existing somewhere in the world and giving people an idea of what's better. And it's crazy to me that these days people would just sell away wholesale their freedom of speech, their right to privacy, such things like that, just because they love their stupid political party so much that they'd be willing to piss away everything that makes America what it is, so that way their little political party can get a one-up on the other just for like 4 years, and then things just keep getting worse. It's so interesting to me because someone said CNN is dying. It's like, well, yeah, if they are, then that means people don't like what they're doing. It's like they have a right to run their company into the ground. We have a right to run our company into the ground. If I wanted to wake up one day and just come onto this channel and just start spewing the most heinous political stuff imaginable, we have a right to do that. It wouldn't be smart, it would be stupid, but I mean, we could do that. Any of y'all could do that at any moment. You could go out into a public town square, just start saying whatever the hell you want, and you have a right to do it. That's what makes America an amazing place, is that you can have a great diversity of ideas and opinions and beliefs, and the government is never going to force you to change your opinions or your beliefs. I find it crazy these days that people act like the government should ever have a right to do that. Because I remember 6 years ago, that was attempted on a certain thing that came around with a certain kind of a disease that came through the country, and nobody was a big fan of it back then. Oh, we need free speech. And now that party's gotten in charge that was just demanding free speech 6 years ago, now they want to cramp down on free speech as well as much as they can. And I'm like, does anyone realize how un-American the premise is from either direction, no matter who's doing it and for what cause and for what purpose? It's not an American sort of a principle. It's not an American ideal. And I feel like people who argue that sort of stuff don't even have America's best interests at heart, because they would understand that the rights and liberties that American citizens have, that we've had for 250 years, is the only thing that makes America what it truly is and what makes America an amazing and great nation. But still, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Parker Brandon. He said, try taking 10 to 20 grams of creatine daily. I work 16-hour days often, and when I started taking 15 grams daily in a drink, it made a huge difference in my mental clarity. And I found out about it here on YouTube. And I've heard about that, by the way. I've tried those like supplement type stuff before. Generally speaking, it really doesn't do much for me, to be honest. I will say I don't do vitamins or anything like that. That might be something wise to start doing, possibly. I'm not really sure. But generally speaking, I try just to eat healthy. And also I have my caffeine every once in a while, like the coffee, once in the morning and once at night for the stream. So I usually am okay with that. I think like it might possibly be just fatigue or something like that. I think I realize what it might be. I actually woke up earlier than normal this morning to deal with some business this morning. I think that might be what it was, because usually we sleep a little bit later into the morning because we go to sleep at like 2 a.m. in the morning every night because of the stream schedule. And I think I didn't get the proper amount of sleep. That might be it. It might be catching up to me just from today. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm thinking that's probably what it is. Like it probably was that. But you know, I'd just be straight up. I'd just be, you know, completely honest. I thank you for helping me with that. This one, by the way, like with the business side of stuff that we were doing there. But beyond that, I think vitamins would be.
Oh man, I hate taxes, folks. I hate taxes.
Yeah, it was
I'm gonna
tax
be like,
stuff.
straight up. It was
Like,
damn taxes. It was damn taxes. I hate taxes. I tell you what, it's a pain in the ass. By the way, the Uncle Sam wants his cash, and we gave Uncle Sam his cash. He got a big chunk, big chunk. I must say, everybody has their hands out these days when it comes for like a chunk. YouTube gets a chunk, the government gets a chunk. Everybody else wants a chunk, and we're left with a morsel. Very nice. I love that.
yeah, you know, it's always fun, you know, especially when they go, "Oh, you're running a YouTube channel, huh? Well, we'll have to add a self-employment tax to that." It's like, damn, it's like it's like, are you kidding me?
Oh,
Like
Uncle
that's
Sam loves self-employed people.
oh man, Uncle Sam loves the self-employed folks. What did they add, Matthew, to the tax burden? It's like an extra 15% or something like that.
Well, see, here's the thing with the self-employment tax. If you're employed, your company covers that for you, so they're paying it. It's not if you're self-employed, you're simply covering both parts of the tax. So there's like I think it's like 15% or roughly something like that for the self-employment tax, and then you have your normal taxes that everybody pays, whether or not you're self-employed or employed. So what for us being self-employed, we had to pay all of it ourselves. It's all on us. So that's a doozy. If you have an employer, they pay that 15% roughly or so. The company takes care of it, and then they withhold taxes from your paycheck and stuff like that. But for us, it's like it's a free for all. Like you pay everything for us. Like they're taking the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, like you sit there and you go, oh, well, that's not too bad, and then you add like that additional self-employment tax, and you're like, like it's always humongous, like it's unbelievable what they take when you actually have to pay the self-employment tax. But that's what we were having to do this morning. We both had to get up at like the crack of dawn nearly, and then start working on that, and had to look over the forms and double look them over, and then send them all down to the post office, and then send them certified, you know, the whole deal. And so yeah, that's probably why he's tired. I actually like. I usually work off of a very little amount of sleep, and I'm kind of having to change that because I think it's absolutely beating me to death. Because I usually get folks like 5.5 hours of sleep on average, probably each night. It's like 6 or 5. And generally in the past, when I overslept, I would wake up and I'd be like, dang, I feel like bushed. And so then I started to undersleep, and then I was like, oh, I feel great. And nowadays, I think it's flipped back around to the other side, because now I sleep like 5 hours or 5.5, and I'm like absolutely bushed every day. I'm like, dang, I'm so exhausted and tired. And so I think I need to start getting on up into like that 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night to try and actually get some decent sleep, and then get back at everything the next day without feeling absolutely spent every single day. So you know, that's something that we had to consider in the background. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $10 support from Slinger. And thank you, Slinger, for that $10 support. And they said, if you guys could bring back 2 historical figures for a boxing match, not a botching, but a boxing match, who would it be, and who do you think would win? Thank you both, LSA. Now that's an interesting one right there. I would like to put Mao Zedong up against Stalin. I would like to see that. That could be interesting. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would like to put Vladimir Putin and Jack Dempsey in the same ring and see what Jack Dempsey
He's
does to him.
alive.
Well, I mean, you know, like he said, anyone from history. I mean, we're in history right now. You know, it's like, did he say anyone dead from history? Did he say that specifically?
He said 2 historical figures, but you can't be in history unless you're dead.
Well, no, you can be a historical figure and still be alive. I mean, you know, there's like a lot of U.S. presidents that are still alive that are historic. You know, like George Bush, Obama. Let's see, who else? Clinton. You know, like all those people are historic to some degree. You know, and they're still alive. So I would put Jack Dempsey in the ring with Putin. Like that's what I do. I take the living guy and I put him up against the well-dead guy, and see what happens. If y'all don't know, Jack Dempsey was basically the guy who made boxing what it was, and that guy would rip people to shreds. Like he would literally knock their teeth out and stuff, in the ring. It was crazy. Y'all ought to watch the Jack Dempsey fights. It was so funny. This guy would be slaughtering people, and you hear the announcer he'd be like, "Oh, the sanguinary fluid is all over the boxing ring. Heavens, he's giving him a left and right." And it's like, it's the craziest thing because this guy sounds so aristocratic who's like commentating on the thing, and this guy's literally just ripping some dude apart on film. It's the craziest thing. But anyways, also, Wonky Bomb said, I want peak Mike Tyson with Putin. Honestly, that would be a good one as well. But Mike Tyson's still alive, so I think by the rule, like, I think he'd have to fight in the current state. But if Mike Tyson had passed away, unfortunately, I would pick Prime Mike Tyson versus Putin. That would be a fight for the ages right there. Mike Tyson was really, really good. Actually, funnily enough, folks, Mike Tyson's inspiration for boxing was Muhammad Ali and Jack Dempsey. He actually said that in a lot of interviews back in the day. He was like, Muhammad Ali and Jack Dempsey were really the guys I looked up to and were like, the fighters I wanted to kind of emulate. And you could really see it. Like if you watch the Dempsey fights, like you could see like how like Tyson kind of implemented some of what he did. Really interesting stuff. But also, Fist of Glory said Andrew Jackson versus Napoleon. I can tell you who would win that one hands down. It'd be Andrew Jackson. I mean, Napoleon was like a scrapper when he was like in school and like the mainland of France after his family moved from Corsica. But I don't really think Napoleon was like a real scrapper. Like Andrew Jackson was a straight up killer. Like he was dueling, like he killed 40 people in duels at the White House while he was president because they would make insulting comments about his wife. That guy is no one to mess with. I think he would give Napoleon a real beating at that point. That's guy. I think if you put Andrew Jackson against most people, he'd probably beat most people, really. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have here a $50 support from Little Bear. And thank you, Little Bear, for that 50 as well. We appreciate that. They say, good day, lads. And Andrew, can you please give your opinion on someone in leadership calling for no quarter when the military rule U.S. says that it is a war crime?
I don't know who's been calling for no quarter. I haven't heard of that recently, but if they are, that's stupidity its finest. If it is, you're supposed to give quarter. It's like we are. We're supposed to be the moral example of the world. Like, people don't get that. And here comes someone, this guy's never served in the military. And I got to say really quickly before anyone says that, y'all know how bad that sounds? Like when you really sit down and think about that? Like, do y'all ever think about how bad that sounds to basically say that killing civilians is fine? Like, just to word it that way. Like, I get that it happens, and that, of course, is understandable. But making it sound like civilian deaths are just nothing, and it's no big deal at all, and it just is whatever, that doesn't sound that good. So before anyone makes that comment, it's not going to sound good when you make it. But beyond that, though, if someone did say that, that's absolutely ridiculous. We clearly give quarter to those who are surrendering. That is not only civil, it's humane, and it's also well within the confines of the Geneva Convention, which we're a signing member of. And that's been in every Geneva Convention since basically the first ones. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Ross Nib. And thank you very much, Ross, for that $20 support. And he said, hey, fellas, and how close to a nuclear threshold moment do you reckon are we about now? And the oil must flow in LLT, LSA.
I would say that we're getting kind of on up there a little bit. I don't want to say that, but it's kind of getting around to that point. And I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Melissa, and thank you very much, Melissa, as well for that 10. And she said, if you can be told what you can see or read, then it follows that you can be told what to say or think, and defend your constitutionally protected rights. No one else will do it for you, and thanks.
Thank you so much for supporting. I definitely agree. People have always got to protect their rights from the government, because if they give any government of any party laissez-faire to basically stomp on their rights, we're basically giving the next party and the one after that and the one after that blank checks to do whatever they want when they get in power, which is a very bad thing to set the precedent for. And so big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, I saw someone say, I don't think you understand the cost of that, though. It's not about wanting to kill them. It's if you remove the cost of war from the other side, sometimes it actually ends more lives than it saves. I'd say that that's not necessarily true, because if you go around just mindlessly killing civilians, whether it's on purpose or on accident, what you're doing is that you're creating a whole bunch of radicals every time that happens. Because they're now going to hate Americans, and specifically the American military, and they're going to want to kill someone in the American military. Because, that happened a lot in places like Vietnam. Whenever anyone would go through in Vietnam out in the bush and basically conduct an unheard of and unreported melee massacre, we basically just radicalized that whole area into being Viet Cong sympathizers. That would end up getting more Americans killed down the line. Like civilian collateral is something that needs to be mitigated as much as possible, not just from the moral perspective, but from the practical reality perspective. If you end up killing just random civilians, the civilians that knew that person are going to hate us now, and they're going to want us dead, and they're going to try and help out some way to get more Americans killed. So I get where you're coming from to a degree, that sometimes civilian collateral is going to happen. I definitely agree with that. It is going to happen from time to time. You might have to hit a factory that's in the middle of a city that's filled with civilians in the middle of a work shift, but they're building bombs in a bomb factory, and if you bomb it, a couple of them are going to die, and that's going to happen. Like, that's an understood reality of war. But if you just say something like, there's an Iranian general on this block, and you do what the Israelis do, which is just level the entire block and kill hundreds of guys on that block, you're going to radicalize everybody in that city, basically. They're going to see what we did, and they're going to hate us at that point. They're never going to see our side after that, because we killed their family members, their children, their mothers and fathers, all in that one go. And so, it's like, we definitely don't need to be doing that. And on top of that, Americans are not barbarians. We're not animals. We don't go around just mindlessly slaughtering people. We're a civilized nation of civilized people with upstanding morals and convictions. And I think that our army should always represent those morals and convictions, instead of not living by them, and then we basically just give them a pass every time and just go, oh, well, because if you think about it, when we watch other countries conduct the very actions that we say are fine, we sit there and call them just animals, barbarians, uncivilized bastards from hell. Imagine if they came over and did that to one of us. Like, imagine if that person, that civilian, just that random, no-name, nobody civilian that died in that, was someone you knew, like your daughter or your son or your mother or your father or your brother or someone like that, or your sister. Imagine if it was one of your family members that just got shot, just in the chest by some soldier that came from another country out of the blue. You're going to want to see those guys dead from that point on. And at that point, you might go to any length. You might even join a guerrilla force to see that those invading forces are killed. And in the end, that turned out worse for them than it would have to just try and mitigate collateral as much as possible. So I'd say it's really two-pronged. It's one, has a real purpose in war of not turning the local population against us by just needlessly slaughtering innocents. And two, it also is well within moral principle to not slaughter innocents that are unarmed. It wouldn't make any sense to do that if there was a way not to. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have here a support from none other than Kurt Smith, who put in a 10. And thank you very much, Kurt, for that support. Sadly, I can't read it, though. It gets too political, but we do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Gnostic, who said, turn down the heat and let the pizza cook for a good 18 to 30 minutes. It's ready 2 minutes after the house starts to smell really good. And no shame, sir. A perfectly cooked frozen pizza is no trivial feat.
And I gotta say, I suppose, Don, you have a very well thought out formula for this too. I'll have to try that sometime. But a huge thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Octavian Timorsanu, who said, typically, the longer a war drags on, the more local support begins to erode. And do you worry that the U.S. could lose the support of the Iranian people, much like it did in Iraq and Afghanistan?
I gotta be kind of honest, it doesn't really seem like they have a lot of support right now, because basically nobody's gone out to the streets once. I mean, like, we saw some tiny crowds on like day 1 and 2 of the war, but those completely disappeared after that. We've never seen sight of them again. I would say that I'll be honest with you all, the original analysis that we had in January was accurate, that we basically told them to all go out in the streets and they got killed in the tens of thousands, and now they don't trust us, basically. So I think, to be entirely honest, the Iranian public's kind of indifferent at this point, because, and also they're realizing at this point with the current U.S. war goal, if they go out in the streets and they die in droves and they put their lives on the line, all that the U.S. is going to do at the end of it is just change the supreme leader to a different Khamenei. and then leave. And they're basically going to be under the same government, and they'll probably end up getting persecuted anyways, no matter what they do. So, they're back to keeping their heads down and just hoping that they don't get theirs taken off of their shoulders next. But a big thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Lucelle, who said that thank you guys for the news. And the good side about being self-employed is that you can deduct every single penny that you spend to run the channel, and you can bring your tax liability substantially lower. And we have a good CPA for all that stuff right there. We let the CPA determine all that stuff. Because me personally, I'm no tax expert. And me personally, I have no desire to be a tax expert. I honestly cannot stand the technicality of taxes. So I let the experts handle that whole business. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support. And I got to say that, that's an interesting point. I do thank you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 50 from Ross Nib. And thank you very much, Ross, for that $50 support. He said, as I approach the anniversary of my first year with the LSA, your channel represents the most radical improvement my life has seen in that time. And your channel is my daily regular, and you're the best when it comes to news and analysis in the LLT LSA.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Ross, and thank you for the incredible support all the way down in Australia. We love to hear that people are absolutely adoring the show, and we're happy to know that you're one of them. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Dan Brooks. He said Cubans are upset that their artist Bad Rabbit wasn't picked for the Super Bowl halftime show. I thought he was Puerto Rican.
Yes, he was Puerto Rican.
He is Puerto Rican.
Yeah, he is. He was not.
He was.
He is Puerto Rican. What did they say Bad Bunny was again?
Cuban.
Yeah, he's not Cuban. He's not Cuban. He's an American citizen, Like a lot of people, I gotta say something about that. I do have to say something. I get people don't really like a halftime show with the songs in Spanish and stuff, but at the same time, Americans have got to do better to know more about our country. I don't even know how the hell, most of the country didn't even really realize that Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, and Bad Bunny, by extension, is a U.S. citizen. He was literally born a U.S. citizen in Puerto Rico. A lot of people didn't know that. That guy is not even from Cuba. He's literally an American citizen from an American territory. And what's crazy about that is that most Americans don't even know that. I gotta say, that's the thing that makes it really hard to take people's political opinions seriously these days, because people talk about how American they are, and they can't tell you one amendment from the U.S. Constitution, and they don't even know our U.S. overseas territories. I get, some people probably know the states, maybe some of them, but then a lot of people don't even know about the rest of what America is, our overseas territories and all that. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Jimmy Dean, who puts in a 5. And they said, invading the island is desperation. And he said, let's see, why would anyone want the war?
Well, I would say that generally because the Iranian nation is a terrorist state. It's probably the best reason why. So I thank you for the support and hope that it does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Zunit once again, and Zunit said, good point on civilian collateral, and an accidental civilian collateral gave locals reason to work with local militia and market my unit in Iraq, and we had 5 KIA because of it in 2007, 2008, and RIP.
Yeah, that's I hate to hear that, but that's also why I say we can't just go around, whacking civilians. It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea from every perspective. From a moral perspective, for one, it makes America look bad whenever we have civilian blood on our hands, and two, it puts targets on the folks down there on the ground that we're just telling, it's fine. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. It's no, please do worry about it. It's that's a matter of survival. If we're in a foreign country, we want the population there to be on our side. We didn't go into Germany, going around just willy-nilly taking out civilians outside of the carpet bombings that we do on the cities. When the army would roll in, we do everything in our power to make sure that civilian casualties were as low as possible, because while the carpet bombings were understood back then to just be a reality of war, going in on the ground with an actual army and taking out civilians is a horrendous idea. And I'd have to say I hate to hear that, and that happened to you, but I think that that's a great example right there of why we always need to make sure, for more reasons than one, that we cut down on civilian collateral as much as we can. It's just bad in every way. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Hello? Uh-oh. Looks like Discord's had an issue, folks. Well, hold up. Let me go and try and fix this really quickly. Can we fix it? Yes, we can. We can fix this. It takes a little bit of effort. It takes a little bit of time, and it takes a little bit of sweat. It's hot in this room, by the way, folks. It's like boiling in here. Let's see. Hello?
Garbo, I tell you, Garbo.
My boy! Well, I honestly think, man, it's a Discord thing because we've changed everything. I mean, you know, it's like computers, routers, you know, everything. Like it's probably a Discord thing. I'd suppose at this point, there's really nothing else I can do. Like I can maybe try and like change the entire internet infrastructure of America, but I don't think we have the funds for that one. But with that,
Go ahead and get that done, Jamie.
Get on it, Jamie. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Brian Ogden, who said, "Thanks for your time."
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying our time and helping us to keep this thing running. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Instigator, who said, "Did you guys see that an orb was found in Colombia, and maybe the orb of judgment? And YouTube short called it the Buga Sphere."
I haven't heard about that, actually. I think that would be out of our news purview, because while we did talk about the Orb of Judgment, phenomena pertaining to large glowing orbs in the skies just it really isn't our purview in news. So unfortunately, I haven't really been able to hear about that. But a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Sarah Bear Rar, who said, "I'm against this war, but if we walk away now and leave the limited regime in place, then they'll just look for revenge and sponsor even worse terror."
I definitely agree with you on that one. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Craig Jones, who said, "I just feel a need to help you eat food fund from the U.S. Air Force."
Hey, and thank you for the food fund from the U.S. Air Force. We'll be heading down to the DFAC and having some delicious food on courtesy of the U.S. Air Force. And a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Mac Bones, who said, "I appreciate the honest commentary."
And we appreciate you greatly for enjoying the show and supporting it so that way we can keep up the honest commentary. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Jack Ray, who said, "What happened to Iran's ballistic missile launchers? Do tell, TEL." Oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Like I was waiting for that. But I guess you could say they ended up combusting a little, you know. But big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from B. Woodward, who said 3.14, like the number of pi. LSA will never end, 314.
Hey, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Jack Ray, who said, Putin quotations, "I don't want any before going in my backyard. Putin's lackey, that's it.
I suppose. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, I had to abridge the last part of it, by the way. That's why it didn't make sense in the end. I had to abridge the last part, because I didn't catch the last part until I was almost about to say it, so I had to abridge it. But we also have a 5 from Jimmy Dean once again. He said, 40 trillion in debt and $2 trillion a year in interest. Good luck digging out of that hole. Let us know how it works out. Well, no, trust me, the debt collector is not coming for America. Trust me that. I don't know if the debt collector has a defense against nukes because the U.S. happens to be armed with quite a few of them. So I don't think China or anybody's going to show up and say, "We would like our money," because I think the U.S. might say, "No thanks, go back," and they might probably go back. But Enforcer, what say you?
Also, that's like operating under this like really weird concept that people in America have that like no other country in the world doesn't, like, has no debt. Every country in the world has debt. A lot of them have debt percentage-wise compared to their GDP that far exceeds ours. And generally, they're fine. Like, you know, like, I don't know why a lot of people are always like, they'll never pay it off in their lifetime. It's like nobody else in any other country will either. It's like, hell, have you seen it? Have you seen the other countries and their national debts? Like what China has? I mean, China's debt per GDP percentage is larger than ours. Like ours is like, I think 102% right now. China's is like 130. And they're still fine. You know, like people always sit there and go, "Oh, China, look at China." It's like, hell, it's like their debt's worse than ours according to their GDP figures. But you don't see a lot of people talking about the Chinese debt. Like, you know, like, and also I saw someone say, "Not here in Norway." Oh, you want to bet? You want to bet? Norwegian national debt. Highly. So Norway has a GDP one of the lowest debt to GDP ratios, which is only 55% of their GDP, which means that they have a national debt of 80 billion US dollars. So yes, they're running a debt. Like, not as bad as ours, but Norway has a national debt of $80 billion right now, which is about half of the national GDP annually at this point. So every country on earth has one. Like think of a country, Matthew. Throw one out to me and let's go pull it up.
India.
Let's go pull that one up. India national debt. India has a national debt, let's see here, that is 83% of its GDP, which is, let's see, I unfortunately I don't know how to pronounce the Indian currency, but they have a, let's see here, I'm trying to see what the actual debt amount is. Here we go. Let's just go to the global debt database for central government debt from the International Monetary Fund, which will give us probably the best numbers that we can get. So let's see. Hold up, folks. It's taking a minute to load. The International Monetary Fund has a slow loading website. So it's still loading up here on the side screen. Give it just a minute, folks. But I always find it funny where everyone's like, oh, good luck paying off the debt. It's like, yeah, every other country in the world has debt as well. You know what happens if they come and try and collect on our debt? Like any of the foreign lenders, the U.S. lenders go and try and collect on the debt that they have with us as well. So it's basically a Mexican standoff at that point. No one's coming to collect anyone's debt because then everyone's going to go around the world collecting on all of the debts, and then it ends up imploding the global economic system. But let me see here. The International Monetary Fund website does not want to load. So sadly, I won't be able to get those figures for y'all on each country, but every nation in the world has debt. There's not a single one that is not running some form of a tab or a debt. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Smarzig, who puts in a 5 and said, hire Zelensky to clear the strait.
I am Volodymyr Zelensky, and many people say that I like crack, but you know, that's not true. You know what I like to do, though? Crack through blockades. Boom. But beyond that, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Smelly Fellow once again, who said, what do you think about the IRGC sinking the Abraham Lincoln for the 9th time in the last 2 weeks? LOL.
I think it's a tragedy, and rest in peace to all of those sailors who woke up for their next day of service on the ship. So big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ulf Hednar, who said, if Putin has to flee Russia, where do you think he will try to go? And my money is on China or North Korea, and small possibility of Belarus too.
I have a feeling he'd go to China, because China would be more akin to his high-end tastes. Living in North Korea, it's a heavy step down. Even being in the top echelon of North Korea, it's a huge step down from what even Putin's used to in Russia. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Our next one goes to none other than Smelly Fellow yet again, who put in a 5 and said, Vienna did not fail because a Mongol failed because of humidity in Eastern Europe. Mongol bows failed, actually.
Interesting. I thank you for the support and sharing that. That's interesting to hear. And a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Katie Brandon, and thank you very much, Katie, as well, for that support. She said, in Poland, 2 townships started a war over a cow.
Really? I didn't know about that. That's actually interesting. And so a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that well, quite well, as a matter of fact. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Thermal Scopes, who said today's orb word is orbicular, meaning to have the shape of a flat circle or disc or a rock containing spheroidal igneous inclusions. Pretty fun.
Huh. And I thank you for the support and sharing that with us. That's very interesting to hear. And I got to thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And Matthew, I actually was able to find something here really quickly. And I just want to ask you something. This is about the debts and stuff. Matthew, think of a... Let me ask you something, Matthew. Look at Singapore, right? You see Singapore, yes?
Yeah.
You know how high-end and luxurious it is and everything, and how people consider it to be, like, wildly successful and all?
Right.
What do you think the percentage of debt to their GDP is? What do you think it is?
Probably massive, honestly, because I think Singapore took out massive loans to build all that stuff. I think it might have been from the World Bank.
Yeah, what percentage, like ballparking it, what do you think the percentage of GDP to debt would be?
Probably maybe over 100%.
137%. 138,
Yeah, that sounds
actually.
about right.
Okay,
They've
so
got a crazy airport too. They really spent that money good.
so think about this. Think about let's think about another country that people would consider to be economically successful. The state of Japan. What do you think their debt to GDP ratio is?
The state of Japan, eh? I don't know.
Take a ballpark, just wild shot in the dark.
110,
Go a little higher.
180.
260%.
Wow, now that's a problem right there.
Yeah,
They might need credit consolidation.
they might. Like they might. But you know, something that's interesting about that, folks, is that people still consider Japan to be a wildly successful country. And what's even crazier about that, folks, is that Japan is the third largest economy in the world, third only to China and the United States. So I think some of y'all might be seeing here that the debt, like, it's not a good thing for a nation to have debt, but it's also not game ending. Because if Japan can have a 260% debt compared to their GDP annually, and they're still going, and they're still the third largest economy in the world, clearly it's not going to bring the roof down for the debt to keep rising a little bit. All right, here's another country. How about Italy? Matthew, what do you think the debt to GDP ratio is in Italy?
Italy, I don't know. I don't really have a clue.
Take a ballpark. Just one guess. Any guess.
Like 80?
160%.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now, if a person had a debt ratio like that, they'd probably be in debtor's prison.
Yeah, they probably would be. You know what? Here's something else that's interesting. Look at this. This is according to the Lausanne movement, which is some sort of a organization. I would unfortunately, folks, I don't know about this one in great detail, but this is the total global debt chart here. This is every country in the world and the amount of global debt that they've compiled. And then this is global debt as a share of GDP over the past few decades, including from 2020 on. And what's interesting, folks, is that it seems as though a lot of people in the world, not just the United States, have been dogpiling on a lot of debt over the past 6 years or so, ever since the pandemic happened. Seems to me like it's not a game-ending situation, because if every country in the world's doing it, and a lot of countries, for example, like Japan, Italy, and Singapore, which a lot of people would consider to be economically successful, also have an insurmountably large amount of debt, and they're still going. I mean, I think that gives us an idea that debt is not going to be a killer of the United States, especially if Japan can get to the point that they have a debt per GDP 2.5 times larger than ours relative to their economic size, and they're still going and they're still fine. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Laser, who said, any power you give this administration, you also give to the next.
That's true, and that's why I think people always forget. And so a big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Live Animal, who said, how easy and difficult will it be for Marines to land on Bandar Abbas, and can it lead to casualties?
It won't be the easiest thing, and it probably will lead to casualties, but as long as it's executed well, it shouldn't be leading to a high number of them. But at this point, it's almost necessary, sadly. But a big thanks to you for support and help with the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Leviticus, who said, you both need to build self-care and work weeks, and it's not fancy, and don't fall for gimmicks. I'll support a side fundraiser for some massage therapy session. Me personally, I usually just get outside and go for like a bike ride or something like that. But I think today, though, I don't think anything would have done that for me today. I just feel like the sleep was a problem, and also possibly fatigue from like going nonstop. That's possibly it as well. But we really don't have a day off anymore. Like, that's really not a thing. Like, Mondays are no longer really a day off either, at least since the Iran war started for the most part.
And
so
taxis.
Yeah, and also tax season on top of that. So all that stuff is like adding into like our normal routine as well. So it's a lot of stuff all at once, to be perfectly honest. But we do appreciate that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you for support as well. But we take care of ourselves generally well. You know, we sit around in a chair for maybe 2 to 3 hours a day doing nothing. I mean, that's pretty good, right? But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Ryan H. on Orbs. He said, Liechtenstein has the lowest debt to GDP ratio.
Oh, yes, the princely house of Vaduz, if I remember correctly. Actually, no, it's not Vaduz. Oh, damn, I got to think of the family who runs Liechtenstein. I can't remember him. Oh, well. But it's a really, Really cool place, Liechtenstein. Really neat place. You know, the Swiss actually accidentally crossed into Liechtenstein, and they officially issued an apology to Liechtenstein for violating their sovereignty, which is kind of funny because Liechtenstein doesn't even have a standing army, like, at all. You could go in there and take Liechtenstein over, actually, folks. Crazily enough, if you had like 20 armed guys, you could probably take Liechtenstein. Like, that's honestly kind of crazy to think about. That wouldn't be smart. Like, you're going to get curb stomped by the Swiss because the Swiss have a defensive pact with Liechtenstein. But it's kind of crazy that that country has no standing army. Like, even with it being wildly small, you would think they'd have at least something like akin to an army, but they don't. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have here a $5 support from Ross Nib once again. He said the coup attempt with Putin is the best news in years. And how's that threat unfolding in any recent news?
Generally, it seems to just be simmering right now. Like, it's a big threat, apparently, but it's only simmering, and we haven't really seen it take off if it is going to take off. So big thanks to you for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, we did read off Pretzel's Garage's super chat, right? Like, I remember reading that one off. But
read it again.
Let's see here. Let me go grab it real quick. Give me just a second. Let's see here. Stall for just a second while I grab it.
And we're stalling. Whoop, whoop, pull up. Sync rate. Whoop, boop, 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 boop. Oh, there we go.
so here it is, by the way. Pretzel's Garage put in a 20, and he said, late to the stream tonight, but here's a 20 for the train fund, and caught some Montana rail link hoppers on my rail fan trip in Tehachapi today, in LSA forever.
Oh, the Tehachapi Pass? I think that's how it's pronounced. That's so cool. You know, I love Montana Rail Link. I wanted to do them for a little while, like as a model railroad thing. Let me show you all what they look like, folks. I think it's one of the best paint jobs that ever existed for trains in the world, just being straight up. But that's what Montana Rail Link's trains looked like. And I love that paint job. It's so cool. Look at that. It was such a good paint job. I believe they got bought out by BNSF, and now their trackage is just generally a part of BNSF at the larger part. But it's a cool railroad. I hate to see that it disappeared, but that is also really cool that you saw some all the way down there in whatchamacallit, down in the in California, I believe is where that is, the Tehachapi Pass. And there's also, let me see, Reading and Northern Railroad. I actually saw some Reading and Northern rail cars from the modern Reading and Northern, which is like a short line, and I saw some in Birmingham before we moved, and I was like, that is so cool, like really neat, honestly. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Ross Nib, and thank you, Ross, once again. He said, "Have you guys ever flown planes in DCS? And if so, what do you rate it?" I think it's possibly a certain type of website.
Yeah, DCS, I have played it before. I generally flew an SU-27 in it, and I would say that it's pretty decent. Like, a lot of people say that that is the best military flight sim out there in the world, and I definitely have to agree, at least available to the public, that is. So a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from DWRB, who said, "I wonder if the orb has a death laser, and if only we could summon it to protect the Strait of Hormuz and strike hostile vessels and projectiles in LSA."
That would be cool, wouldn't it? Big thanks to your support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Gavin Matthews, who said, "Did you hear Israel planned building a canal straight through Gaza to the Red Sea?"
I had heard about that, but I don't think that's ever going to take off the ground because it'd just be economically infeasible in reality, probably. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 3 from Jackie Lou, who said, "Happy Pi Day."
And happy Pi Day indeed. And a big thanks to you for the support. And we're on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Plazath, who put in a 2, and Tresol, who also put in a 3 as well. And thank you both very much for that support, and we do appreciate that very much. We also have a 2 from Uncovered Cube, who said LSA.
LSA. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Chris Filebach once again. He said, "Strait of Hormuz."
Ah, that's a good one. I like that one. That's a pretty good one. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Marc-Andre Brunette, who said, "I obviously chose the right channel to get my info."
Hey, and that's a pretty good one too. I like that. And a big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Russ Nib. He said, "A little while back, I might have made a joke about the Taliban and their love of a certain animal out there. If that kind of thing in the chat bugs you guys, please let me know. I will desist."
And I thank you for the support and considering the audience's feelings on that. A big thanks to you. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Michigan Blunder, who said, what happened to Iran's MiG-29s and 150 old jets?
They've mostly been blown up. Like they've mostly been completely destroyed from what we know. But a big thanks to you for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Waldox, who said, China has left the chat.
They have. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And a big shout out to Orlando and Jeff Thorne, who each put in a $2 support, and we appreciate you both very much for throwing in that support. We also have a 2 from Craig Jones, who said, take one from the chat. And we shall take one from the chat in honor of Craig's super chat. And this one goes to AF Kaplan. He said, has there been any more information of a possible coup against Putler?
Generally, we're seeing that it's still kind of like in the simmering phase, so sadly, we don't have anything too big to report on it for today. So, a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from True Dreamer, who said, do you think Iran has dirty bombs on somewhere over there?
Yeah, they could make one, but I don't think they have any. Big thanks to you for support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Laughing Plague, who said, do you think we are going BOG and LLT LSA and love y'all?
And thank you for the support, but sadly, I just don't know what BOG means. But a big thanks to you for the support and help this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Smelly Fellow once again, who said, Russia and Ukraine fighting each other. What in the world? At least see this one.
Yeah, I do. I think thank you for the support. Interesting sort of a statement, and I believe that our corporate focus groups have stated that would alienate an audience. So sadly, we can't touch that one. But with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Zuna, who said, B Iran.
And I thank you so much for the support and bomb. But big thanks to you for the support and help the channel to keep it running. With that, we're on to the next one.
Also, a big shout out to Gavin Matthews, who put in a 2, and What a Weirdo, who put in a 1. And thank you both very much for that support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. And with that, folks, I believe that is our last super chat to address. Hopefully, that is all of them. I believe I've gotten all of them. But these days, with about 10 to 20,000 live messages a night, I'm worried that I missed something. So I try to go back and scan and make sure I haven't missed anything. But I think they have been all read out. So hopefully that is the case. Actually, Now here's something I do want to say. YouTube definitely did not show this question earlier. I saw one earlier that came in that actually caught. It popped up in the fan funding tab, but I did not see it in the live chat itself. And I went back and checked. I didn't see it, but it was in the fan funding tab. So that is interesting. I just saw one right here from JAG, who put in a 5. I didn't see this one pop up either, but it's in the fan funding tab. He said, how about destroying all construction equipment around nuclear and uranium sites, bulldozers, backhoe, and dump trucks?
That could do some good, but then they might just move in more equipment and requisition it from the civilian population, so we might be in an endless circular sort of a loop on trying to knock that stuff out. So it's an interesting idea, though. I think that would probably do us some good in the short term, though. Big thanks to you for support and helping the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a whopping 400 Australian support from Ross Nibb. And thank you very much, Ross, for that massive 400 Australian, by the way, Australian monies. We do appreciate that very much. It's very generous of you. He said, just because, an LSA.
And just because, holy moly, that's crazy. And I gotta thank you unbelievably for that support. It is incredible support. Massive support, and we are greatly appreciative of it. I got to thank you massively for that, Ross Nibb, because if it wasn't for folks like you, this channel wouldn't be able to survive. It's incredible. Big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope we were able to address that incredibly well. But Ross Nibb, a legend of the channel, and a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is actually going to be not a next one at all. That is actually all of our super chats for the moment. So we are now going to be jumping into our Morse code decoders and get some live chat questions. This one goes to the entire roster: Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason, Joni, Norm, Arabelle, Heroy, Fluffiness, Kush, Kopateric, Sire, and Brian. They said, the Morse says, Iran is starting to look a little concerned given the fact that Karg Island's been attacked, and LOT, LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got the dent on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. I congratulate you all greatly for getting that correct time and time again. Truly an incredible and amazing thing to see. And I've got to say that we're entirely honored that the Least Experience Corps has once again gotten another Morse code message correct. So a big congrats to you all once again. And with that in mind, folks, it's time for us to get on into the live chats. Due to Matthew being very, very tired. And me also being very tired. I was going like I kind of got. I'm not gonna lie, folks. I've sounded like I've had a lot of energy tonight. I've actually been exhausted the whole night as well. Because I'll be honest with y'all. I got up earlier, I think, than Matthew this morning, and I'm not gonna lie, that is beating my ass right now. I'm feeling absolutely bushed as well. So, we have one more super chat to cover. We're going to address that one, and then we're going to get 3 live chat questions. Because technically, we're going overtime. Like this isn't as bad overtime as other times in recent events, but we're still technically going overtime because the stream's only supposed to be 3.5 hours. And so we're going to get 3 live chat questions, then round this thing out right after the super chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
This one goes to James Hughes, who puts in a 20. He said, poll question, reason the war was started, A, to stop Iran from getting nukes, B, to screw China, C, to help Ukraine, and D, to help Israel.
That is an interesting poll idea, James Hughes, and maybe we'll be able to do that tomorrow on the midday stream. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the third to last question of the night. So Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to Mr. Light Rail, who said, is that Russian Corvette still at Bandar Abbas?
It has slipped away. The Stoichi has been gone for weeks. We don't know when it left, but it left right before the war, and we haven't seen it since. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we have one more super chat to cover before we get to the second to last question of the night. What do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Running Declassified. He said the twist ending would be that the orb is an alien drone or something, and the next war to break out this month is some kind of alien invasion, because at this point, why not?
I mean, really, why not? I mean, like, we're seeing everything happening. I mean, Serbia's about to go to war with its neighbors in the Balkans. Who would have imagined? But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And I mean, at this point, why not? Truly. A big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to D. Lowe, who said, I heard that Canada was gearing up for 26.5 million barrels of production, and would that help offset the current price?
26.5 million? I don't think that's possible, because, I mean, Canada right now produces, I think it's like 5 million? Like, that would be an increase of production by like 500, 600%. I don't even think it's physically possible for them to drill that many wells in a short period of time like this. So I'd have to say, generally, I don't believe that that's happening. I might be wrong. I mean, they might be drilling the most oil wells we've ever heard of in a single period of time, but I have a feeling they're probably not. They're probably increasing production, sure, but not to that extent. But a big thanks to you once again for a really interesting question. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who made the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be the original, who said, Matt, why have we not heard anything about the nuclear facilities, since that's the main reason we were allegedly in Iran?
Well, that's because we generally can't do much to them. They covered up the entrances with hundreds of feet of soil, meaning we have to dig them out to be able to get into them. And we can't really bomb them because they're too deep underground. Not even the mops can really hit them. So generally, that's the problem that we're having at the moment. That's why we're not really hitting the nuclear facilities. We're hitting everything else but the nuclear facilities. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that in mind, folks, it's time for us to round out this stream for the night. I've got to say that we are massively appreciative and hugely thankful for so many of y'all watching the stream tonight. We had a peak viewership of 30,000 people here. And over the course of the stream, for 3.5 hours, 250,000 people have watched this stream. We're entirely honored and greatly appreciative that so many of y'all have been watching this channel, and we hope that y'all have been really enjoying it greatly tonight. If y'all have, please make sure to join us tomorrow in the middle of the day for the news stream that we'll be running then. It will be a Sunday fundraiser, but it won't be a Sunday night fundraiser. It will be a Sunday day fundraiser. And then after that, we will not be having a late night show tomorrow, and we will not be able to make any short war videos on Monday and Tuesday, but our normal streaming schedule will begin again on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news from around the world. And so with that in mind, we will see you all then. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a huge shout out to the almost, I think it's 250,000 plus people that were here tonight. We appreciate every single one of you for joining us once again tonight. We will see you all tomorrow midday, roughly around, I think, 2 p.m. or so, our mountain time in our time zone right here. But we'll have to see exactly when it's going to be. But roughly sometime around there is generally when we're thinking. So we will see you all midday tomorrow for that, to cover the news at that time. And we will, of course, not have a short war video because of that stream being in the middle of the day. So we'll see you on that. that. But in the meantime, though, thank you all once again for joining us. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest and good night.
Spring on me,